They're yours. Hit that one more time. I am the number one determinant of the success or failure. Here we go. Of my students. Hey, y'all, you have a strong summer. Kick some butt next year. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you. That's the mindset. That's the attitude. Love you guys.
And we are live. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to week 128 of the virtual AP Leadership Academy. Let me see who we got here this morning. We got my man, John Few. He said, good morning and can't wait to hear. I'm on fire. I'm on fire with you, John. We got Grace Castaneda in the building. Takesha High. We got Renee Graham. We got Demetrius Scott, Marsha Poe, Donna Shara Gant is in the building. We got Elmani Viney, Jersey City's own. Yolanda McKinney, Will Turner, Michael Benton, who was just on with us recently. We got Principal Dot McKeever, Jeter, Ohio Girl Jones, Rodney Richardson. We're all here in the building. We got Lily Lanier in the building, Arcella Austri, John Hurix, Jocelyn Nelson. My man Sean Hurd, he was dropping some, Sean be dropping some stuff in the morning. He was talking about special needs and just things we need to know as it relates to special needs, even within our leadership capacity. So you might want to check him out. Just go back and watch it after the broadcast and see what he was talking about. And then following Dr. Sheikah Houston and Principal Tammy Taylor, man, they were talking about the role of women and just the realities of being women in education. So you might want to check that out too. So we got Lysandra Brackens in the building. That's on Create and Educate, by the way. We got what we got here. We got Sheikah Houston in the building. Byrianne Collins is in the building. She's going to be a guest on soon. It might be next week. I'm not sure, man. It's the week after. The week after, I think. So Golf RWT, Tiffany Latrice, where we have Principal Tammy Taylor's in the building. Francis Landers Perez is in the building. Melissa Jones Chunu, Asia Burnett, Darnell McElveen. He said Hotep from Minneapolis. But Darnell, I don't know if you know my past in terms of me being a leader, but maybe you saw the video of me on YouTube when they followed me with a camera, the Milken Foundation. But I never started the school day, Darnell. I guess I could say to all of you, I never started the school day ever as a teacher and a principal without saying to my students, Hotep, right? Hotep means peace. It's ancient Kemetic. You guys, some of you may not know what I mean by Kemetic, so I'll say Egyptian, but it's one of the original words in language, and it means peace, right? So I felt like what is a better way to greet youngsters in the morning? And the only thing I could come up, the best way to greet them, Hotep, right? So Hotep in my last school to my North Tech family, right? So let's go. My wife, the Queen, is in the building. Kimberly Broughton Kafele, week 128. We got Dr. T. Williams, Janetta Vaughn is in the building. Scott Wiley, my man, he's in the building. Arlette Johnson, Rashad Davis is out here in Vegas, man. I always appreciate seeing them West Coast folks and folks in Alaska and Hawaii who check in so early to be with us. We got Darlene Pettit, my man Josh Tovar, MPA Jaguars is what he's using. Week 128, he said. We got Dr. T. Williams. I think I said already. Yolanda McKinney. I think I said that too. Hortensia Hernandez is in the building. Dana Clark. Hit the share button. Hit the retweet button as you're coming in. Ronald Pugh is in the building. My man, Gary Catano. I rode through Woodbridge yesterday. Gary, thought about you. I said, man, I got to reach out to my man. We got to get together and just reminisce, right? So we going to get it done, man. You know we got to get it done. Where we at? Tracy Gray is in the building. In Houston, you know, I'm gonna be in Houston on I'll be in Region 4 on Wednesday. talking to the folks all day, man. Leaders all day. Region 4. Those of you out there in that Region 4 area in Houston, come on out and hang out with your brother on this coming Wednesday. And then I'll be in Cincinnati and Mount Healthy on Thursday and Friday. I'm getting ready to wrap it up so we can get started. We got Nancy Osagi in the building, Dr. Charlene Williams, all the way out there in Vancouver, Washington. I appreciate you getting up so early in the morning. Darlene Pettit. What else we got? We got Marianne Francis. It keep coming. Crystal Nolan, Brandon. Hit that share button. Hit that retweet button. Them Facebook groups that you belong to. Let them know. Wake them up. Let them know we here, man. We doing our perspectives and leading while black, but I'll get into that in a little while. Let me first say to everybody now, formally, good morning. Greetings. Welcome to week 128. I got to say that again, man, because y'all remember this was only supposed to be 18 weeks. That's it, 18 weeks. First Saturday in May to the last Saturday in August 2020. And here we are, week 128. Unbelievable. And of the virtual AP Leadership Academy. And as I always say, I don't know about you, but I think I know because you checked in this morning. You here with us live. You didn't wait for the video. You said, I'm going to come on live. So I think I know how you feel right now in real time. But because I'm the host, I got to let you know how I feel. Now, really, I don't need to ever tell you because you can sense it. But just in case there's somebody new on here that doesn't know me, let me just let you know that on this 8th day of October, on a Saturday morning at 11:04, I'm on fire! Woo! Oh, baby! That's how I'm feeling, man. So if you didn't know, now you know. But why am I saying that? Not because I want to boast that I'm on fire. I'm saying it because the audience is primarily leaders, assistant principals who aspire to become principals, or principals who are worn out, beaten down, and questioning the decision to become a leader. Well, sometimes we need them flames on a Saturday, right? So that's what this is all about. But then when you go back on Monday, or your school may be closed on this Monday, so when you go back on Tuesday, you got to bring that energy. You got to bring that excitement. You've got to bring that enthusiasm. You've got to bring that passion for your work, for your school, for your students, for your staff, for yourself, for your purpose, for your mission, for your vision. You got to bring that. So I'm reminding you, if you going in there feeling like your fire is extinguished, you better relight, you better reignite, and be ready to step in there and get your thing going. So enough said, man. Let me give you this quick message. Somebody said you just gave us a message. Let me give you this quick message, man. I'm calling this Leading While Black is a Real Thing. Once again, reading while black is a real thing. As I always do when we do these, this is the 4th time we did this perspectives on leading while black. And as I always say to my non-black viewers who are out there, don't think this isn't for you. It's for you too. Because on these second Saturdays, and I bring in whatever number of black administrators on here, they're on here to talk about the perspectives of walking in their shoes as African Americans. If you're not black administrators, if you're not a black administrator, you still need to hear these perspectives, right? You can't. I don't want you to take the position, oh, this ain't for me this week. No, it's for you. it's for you, right? So if you're not black, you're not African American, don't think I don't need to listen this week. No, this is vital. Rock with us, right? So let's go, y'all. I always got to plug the two books that relate to this. I ain't gonna show you all my stuff, but these are the two: the Assistant Principal 50 and the Aspiring Principal 50. I appreciate all of you that have copies. If you don't have a copy, just go to Amazon, pull out another device, and go to Amazon and get the two. Right? They go hand in glove with the Saturday Academy. But I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you my newest book, The Equity and Social Justice Education 50. Right? Critical questions for improving opportunities and outcomes for Black students. So this book, I know that the political climate of America has cut some of my sales, and I knew that when I wrote it. I knew there were going to be folks that had problems with this title, but I said, I got to write it anyway. And we went on and wrote it. So if your district is having an issue with the word equity, then don't worry about your district getting the book. Get it for yourself. If they're struggling with the word social justice, don't worry about the district then. Just get it for yourself and read it. And I promise you, you're going to find some things in here that are applicable to your craft, whether it be leadership, teaching, counseling, whatever it is. I'm rocking the Cincinnati Tigers today. Negro leagues always, except for when I deviate with some Mets, Yankees, or some other historical teams with historical players like a Willie Mays on the Giants or Hank Aaron on the Braves or whatever, Ernie Banks on the Cubs. But outside of that, we rock Negro leagues, man. Some of the best baseball players that ever lived played in the Negro leagues. You know, let me just say this real quick. I won't be long with it. But, you know, all the excitement around Aaron Judge breaking Roger Maris' record. You know, I was excited about it too. You know, I bought the Yankee jersey just because of Aaron Judge. I called myself pushing him over the top wearing the jersey. Although it didn't say Judge on the back, it said Kafele, right? But you couldn't see that on camera, right? But here's the thing. I don't put a lot into that Roger Maris record, man. I really don't. Hear me, somebody. Hear me without being offended. I don't put a lot into that record because that record was set in 1961. I'm not even talking about Barry Bonds now. I'm going back. That record was set in 1961. 61 homers in the year 1961. But Black baseball players were not permitted into the majors until 1947. So we're not talking about a wide margin between 47 and 61. So if players such as Josh Gibson that played for the Homestead Grays and other teams, because that's not the only one he played for, if people like Josh Gibson who hit 800 home runs, yeah, you heard that correctly, 800 home runs, right? If people like him were permitted to play in the majors in their era, then that 61 homers might not have been the record ever. But because they were born Black or born in Black skin, they were not permitted to play in the majors solely because they were born Black. So yeah, I was excited about Judge finally breaking that record, but I'm not putting a whole lot of stock in that record, that 61 record, because of the Black people, the Black baseball players who were denied entrance into Major League Baseball because they were born Black. I'm never going to forget that. And that's why I proudly rock these jerseys every Saturday. These Negro League teams, I own about 55 of these things, man. I wear them like they're Superman capes, right? I feel strong when I wear these things, man. So, you know, and a lot of people say, where can you get them? Go to Ebbets Field on the web and you can get them. They custom make them for me, man. The authentic joint, right? So let's go, y'all. I'm done with my commercials. I got 3 guests. Actually, I got 2. One of them is not here. I don't know if he had a bad connection. And I see. I don't know. I don't know what just happened, but it's probably on my end. But I'm back. No, I'm good now. All right. Yeah. So folks, I got 2 guests, and here's my third. You hear? Hey, my man Dr. Caston is here. Hey, Doc, did you have a hard time logging on? Unmute yourself.
All of a sudden, I just kind of said my internet had disconnected. Then I didn't realize I needed to press the button. So I apologize for that.
No,
Good
no, we
morning,
good.
everybody.
We good. We good. We on live right now, and my internet just went out for a split second. I don't know what happened, but we here, folks. Do me a favor, hit that share button, hit that retweet button. Let them know we are here, and I got everybody on here now. Before I even say hello to all of you, matter of fact, let me before I read these bios, let me do that formally. Good morning to the three of you, Dr. Baker, Dr. Caston, Dr. Flowers. It's great to see you on the screen. How are you, Dr. Baker?
Hey, good morning, my brother. My brother, as always, up early and on fire, and always spitting knowledge and wisdom and history. It's in your blood.
It's in my blood, man. It's some days I say to myself before I come on, I ain't gonna get into no historical commentary, right?
And you lie to yourself
I
every
lied
time
about
you
this.
say that, so stop saying it.
I had no intention on talking about Roger Maris's previous record and the Negro League players that did not have the opportunity to break that record. I had no intention on talking about that. But then the baseball gods, the baseball ancestors say, yo, say something, right? So
because it's all relative, right? Black Twitter is all the fire about Kanye's White Lives Matter shirts, right? So it's all relative, right? When we talk about race and his refusal to deal with it. So when you're spitting that knowledge about those that have gone before us, that to me, that is what checks his craziness about social constructiveness of whiteness and blackness and how it doesn't affect our lives today. Lies. So when you stand on your soapbox, it reminds those of us who listen and who know and who are study of history that greatness has always been a part of us, no matter what label they put on us.
That's right. That's right.
Right. And so that's why you can't help it.
Can't help it. Can't help it. Can't help it. Let me go to Dr. Flowers. How you doing, Doc?
Doing well, sir. Doing well. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I will say, along with Dr. Baker, I feel rejuvenated based on that little sermonette. You know, I was raised Pentecostal, so for a moment there, I was ready to pass the pan and all that as you was talking. But I'm glad to be here and glad to be part of the service today.
Correct.
To shed light and to learn from others.
Sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you. Dr. Caston, how are you? Unmute yourself.
Fine. There we go. I'm well, thank you. Again, thank you so much for allowing me to be able to sit at this table to speak with you. You know, I'm really excited. You know, a lot of my family members and a lot of my colleagues who I work with have been hitting me up all week long. You know, and didn't even really realize the magnitude of the individual that I would be sitting and sharing a table with. You know, so it really made me excited about this day and really excited about this opportunity to be able to sit here and sit underneath someone, you know, who can offer, you know, and offer many mentorships. You know, I was really excited as well. One of my former students that I taught at Frederick Douglass High School when I was a Spanish teacher there shared with me, Jaquin, or they call me Profe Caston, Profe. That's who I listened to before I got this assistant principalship that I have, you know, and I remember how great he was as a student and particularly with his ability to play that, to play the trumpet. He was a trumpet player and was one of the showcase pieces. So it just really made me really excited to have the opportunity and the chance to really sit here and to meet and to speak with you. Thank you so very much.
Awesome. Awesome. And that's pronounced Jaquin.
Jaquin, just like the column in the Bible in the House of Solomon. Yes.
There you go. There you go. Hey, folks out there in the audience, I gotta read these bios because I don't want you to hear these powerful words without you knowing who you're listening to. So let me read quick. Dr. Baker, Dr. Amber M. Baker is an educator, organizational consultant, entrepreneur, author, and motivational speaker. As president and principal consultant for Beyond Expectations Education Group, LLC, her work incorporates a multiple intelligence approach that engages people in a structured process of rethinking leadership in the workplace, school, and community. With over 25 years as an educator, Dr. Baker is working with urban educators to create substantive change in climate by integrating a holistic approach to educating students. She also works with major school districts on infusing culturally relevant training and professional development into various tiers of administration. Her methodologies have yielded substantial growth in the area of achievement in K-12 education, particularly highly impacted schools. Next, I got Dr. Jamon Flowers is a clinical assistant professor in the Educational Administration and Policy program at the Mary Frances Early College of Education at the University of Georgia. He has earned degrees and certifications from the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, the University of Minnesota, and the College of William and Mary. Prior to joining the EDAP faculty, Dr. Flowers served as a teacher, instructional coach, assistant principal, and principal. He has professional experience in rural, suburban, and urban school settings. Additionally, Dr. Flowers has served in the administrative roles at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. His research interests include principalship, rural educational leadership, and race and educational leadership. More specifically, Dr. Flowers' research focuses on understanding the intersectionality of place, race, educational leadership, and opportunity. And lastly, Dr. Jaken Caston. He got a long one here. I should have said to him, we're gonna stay with that other one you got, but let me read. But I was, as I told you in the email, I was so intrigued by it. Let me read this. A native of Richmond, Virginia, Dr. Caston is currently the principal of a medium maximum. I want y'all to hear me, y'all. Principal of a medium maximum security prison in the state of Maryland. There, he is a strong advocate for education as the catalyst to self-recognition and true redemption of the whole person. His focus for education among the incarcerated is the total elimination of recidivism. His doctoral thesis, Shattering the Revolving Door of Recidivism, a case study of returning citizens' perceptions of the American Community College, aimed to examine the effects that earning community college credentials has on the lives of returning citizens and their efforts to remain free from incarceration. It was rooted in the idea that the revolving door of recidivism can be eradicated through the release of holistically educated returning citizens. Now, this next part is the part that got me when I said, I got to keep this in. Jaken has garnered a treasure trove of experiences through teaching and leading in schools, both statewide and internationally. He has contributed to the growth and development of scholars pre-K-12 and post-secondary through serving in the roles of instructor of Spanish, Spanish as a second language, theater, reading specialist, and in leadership as an assistant principal in inner city and urban districts, as well as internationally. Jaken has traveled to live, work, and study in various Spanish-speaking countries, including study abroad in Antigua, Guatemala, at La Universidad de Guatemala. I know I'm butchering these names. El Bispo Marroquin. This study, amazing learning experience, sparked a profound interest in the Caribbean and the Americas, especially the connection with Afro-Latinos and the Garifuna people. He has enjoyed fellowshipping in the spirit of oneness with people of different nations, tribes, and languages, lived in San Pedro Sula, Honduras, where he taught Spanish as a second language to international students at La Escuela Internacional. I know I messed that up. Got to work on my Spanish. And I'll get you as my tutor, San Pedrana. He has recently discovered the Dominican Republic and is working to establish educational relationships to bring additional experiences to the community, serving those with the least opportunities. And then to close it out, Jaken's professional interest is diversity, equity, and inclusion training, family literacy, foreign language, bilingual development, mass incarceration, recidivism. He is a professional developer, public speaker, budding researcher in these fields. Keep a sharp eye on an ever-present open ear as his voice continues to be heard. That's our three guests, man. I got power on here. Let's go, y'all. Hit that share button. Hit that retweet button. We're on 5 platforms, 2 on Facebook, 1 on Twitter, 1 on... we're not on Instagram right now. Where are we at? YouTube and LinkedIn, right? Let's go. Dr. Baker, got a question for you. As an educator, who is Dr. Amber Baker?
Yeah, Dr. Baker is just a girl from Louisville, right? Who grew up with people underestimating who she was going to be, with a few people sprinkled in that saw something in her when everything about her said that she was going to end up addicted to drugs, probably living in public housing with a few babies, right? I graduated at the bottom of my high school class when we moved to Winston-Salem. Not the bottom percentage, the bottom. Just 2 people had GPAs lower than mine. But was full of anger because of life, right? And people just kept speaking life into me. And so when I talk to my secondary colleagues, I always say, don't ever give up on any of your children. I call them babies, right? Even though they're high schoolers, they're babies, because I was a senior. Last possible opportunity to turn my life around and change the trajectory. But 3 people single-handedly did that. An assistant principal who, before there was the term restorative justice or restorative practices being tossed around, that's how he led, right? So when I got into a really bad fight with 2 sisters who cut my mama's tires over a boy that I didn't even like, they had to pay for that. You don't get to cut my mama's tires and think you're going to get off. But instead of him putting me out of school, he made me work on the campaign of the first Black county commissioner in Forsyth County. Saturday mornings, I had to get up, register voters. And then on the voting day, we didn't have early voting then. I had to drive the van to go pick up people and take them to the polls. And then I had a counselor who wasn't even assigned to me, who got sick of seeing me in the office because of behavior issues, that was questioning me about what I was going to do after high school, what college was I going to go to. Keep in mind, the bottom of the class, bottom.
Yeah.
Not college material. Probably should have been talking to me about the military or trade school, but she saw something in me. And not only did she see me as college-worthy material, she picked the university that I say is the best HBCU ever, Howard University, and I didn't even understand the significance of that. And then I had a white, my 11th grade English teacher, that when I wrote and I journaled about hating crackers and all of my experience with dealing with the Klan in Louisville. And he never blinked. He never got offended. He would hand me my journals back with really insightful comments and would say, Baker, you need to think about doing something with that writing. You write really well. You need to think about going to college. And so, as they say, I got in, I wrote an essay for graduate school, not realizing that when you apply to, college, you apply as an undergrad student, not a graduate student wanting to go to law school. Like I was just going to skip over undergrad and go straight to law. But I think that, along with God's purpose for my life, set me on the trajectory that I'm on. And I've come full circle, even though I'm an educator, moonlighting as a politician, right? All of that life experience prepared me for this assignment in my life at this time. So I still connect with young people. I'm still out here in these streets. I'm still about, speaking life into our young people. I'm still about teaching and education. It's just that my venue has changed. And so I'm still out here. I'm still fighting. I just got a bigger platform, and with a bigger platform comes more opportunities to be in rooms that you wouldn't be in otherwise. And you have to continue to be courageous and speak truth to power, no matter what room you're in.
I love it. I love it. And a lot of what you said, I'm going to be elaborating on as we go through this. I want to ask you, before I go to the next panelist, I want to ask you, Dr. Baker. I asked you who you are as an educator. If I had to tweak that question and asked you, who are you as a Black educator, would that change your answer at all, or would it still be what you said?
No, it wouldn't change my answer, because for me, I'm very in touch with my Blackness, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not an add-on, right? It's the truth I stand in.
Yeah.
So everything I do and everything I say and everything I stand for is the sum total of the experiences that I've lived. And so, no, I don't have a me and then a Black me.
Yeah.
They're one and the same.
I love it. I know that I'm in a lot of spaces. Now, I don't mean as a presenter now. I mean that when I'm in a meeting or something, and I'm going to contribute to the meeting. I know that there are people in the room that are probably thinking, uh-oh, here he goes, right? Because I'm always going to bring that Black perspective.
Absolutely.
Whatever that discussion is, for the reason you just said, that's who I am. It's not an add-on either. Accept me and embrace me for my totality, my wholeness of who I am. I'm not going to compartmentalize that.
Correct.
With that said, let me go to Dr. Caston. Dr. Caston, who is Dr. Jamon Caston as an educator?
Well, as an educator, I think of my educational plight, not being the best student in undergrad, being someone from impoverished areas, who had a dream to be able to speak another language so that I could have more friends. I think that education was the conduit. My mom thinking it not irrational for her to purchase my sisters and I Encyclopedia Britannicas when we were 10 years old, 1988, that I actually have that framed and on my wall here, that actual receipt where in 1988, my mom paid $500 for a set of encyclopedias. And it baffled me as a child, as a 10-year-old child, because I couldn't understand why was she buying these books, but she wouldn't buy me a pair of Air Jordan sneakers, that only cost $100, but I didn't know that at that time that my mother knew that education was something that would not fade, unlike the Jordans, because, in order to capitalism, they have to keep creating them so that we will continue to want them in order to desire them, in order to buy them, but this education that she was giving to my sisters and myself, it would never bleed away, and I didn't understand that as a 10-year-old child, but now as a grown man and someone who is working with people who have made mistakes and working with people who are in an environment because of things that they've done. But many of them have the academic prowess of geniuses, and it's through education that we're tapped into to know that we can be beyond our circumstances. We can be beyond our environment. It was the W encyclopedia or section of the Encyclopedia Britannica that really blew my mind as a 10-year-old child, because there were waterfalls. And I knew in the projects of the South Side of Richmond, Virginia, I had been explored all throughout my community. There were no waterfalls. So at 10 years old, that education helped me to realize that the world was so much larger than my community. It was much larger than the drugs that that I saw being sold, and the temptation from the desire to want to have the nice car and the nice cars and all of the friends and the popularity. It helped me to understand, whoa, there is something beyond what I'm seeing, because, there are no waterfalls in this community, and unlike what TLC was teaching me in my teenage years, don't go chasing waterfalls. It was actually chasing waterfalls that through education that helped me to be the man that I am today, and just to sort of piggyback on the comment about being a Black educator as well. I think that first and foremost, when you see me, regardless of, what language I speak, regardless of what my gender is, whatever my sexuality, my faith, my religion, my education, attainments, my goals and my dreams, I believe that when you first encounter me, you're going to see an individual, a man who is Black. So it's no way that I can, ever, shy away from that, and then along with that is so many, other areas that I intersect with, along with being wrapped in this beautiful melon that God decided that I would be, and I embrace that and I carry that with me, because I want you to see me as a Black educator. I want you to see me as someone who is able to rise above the negative connotation and what it means to have grown up in an impoverished area in a single parent household. We all know those at-risk statistics, but to be able to transcend that because of education. And I give all the glory, outside of God and my parents, to my desire to thirst for knowledge, and I desire to give that to all that I encounter. I constantly want to exude that, to be able to teach and to also be able to learn.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Strong words. Dr. Flowers, as an educator, who is Dr. Jamon Flowers?
As I was listening to other people, I was processing that question and getting my answer together. I definitely say that my plight as an educator began with my interactions with my great-grandfather, who only had a third grade education. And I remember like it was yesterday, him telling me that education is important and that I needed to go get my schooling. So Hubert Flowers made a big part, played a big part in my whole evolution as an educator, but also I'm an educator that I did not have. So growing up in a very small town, I didn't have an African-American Black male teacher or African-American or Black teacher. I didn't have a teacher of color, really, until I got to college per se. I had one, but Miss Elaine Hall was my 8th grade language arts teacher. And I didn't have another one. I saw them, not that they didn't have them in my school system. I saw them, but I didn't have them. So I felt like I always was missing something. And I really didn't know what I was missing until I went to college. And I had my first Black male professor, and he required me to read Invisible Man. And the autobiography of Malcolm X, which I had not been introduced to throughout my whole 13 years. And I had no idea. But it changed my perspective. It changed the way I look. It changed the way I even taught. As a former English teacher, language arts in middle and high school, I made it a point to be that teacher for my students, despite your color, but for my students that I did not have, whether I was pushing you to do something that you felt like you couldn't do, or sometimes that you did not want to do. I did not allow them to come up with excuses, but we came up with some solutions. And then when I transitioned from the teacher to the administrator, I had a mentor, really helped me throughout the whole process. And I realized, that I had to be that educator that, afflict those who are comfortable and comfort those who are afflicted. And I kept pushing because unless you are afflicted, you're not going to make the change that is necessary to teach the students. And despite, certain things and how you feel about the students and their parents, I cannot forget the parents, because some educators, bring in the parents and all this other stuff. We still got work to do. So I think my evolution, and I say evolution because I still evolve. No day is the same for me, even though I'm at the college level, collegiate level now. I'm still evolving as an educator, and definitely as a Black educator. I am in spaces that my great-grandfather never was allowed to go into. So I carry his name proudly, but I also know that it's more than just having a seat at the table. I am going to ruffle some feathers, and similar to you, as you talk a little bit about, here he goes with the whole color thing. Oh yeah, I'm bringing it up because you're not bringing it up.
Yeah.
So let's have these conversations around that. And being the Black educator is not just all about, promoting the African-American students or Black students. Everybody needs to hear this. Everybody needs to understand certain things. So I think as an educator, I continue to grow, but also the core of that is that I am committed to being that educator that I did not have. Not to say that I had horrible teachers. They did the best they could. But I am making an effort to say, here I am, and how can I help you? And let's move forward.
Being that educator that you did not have. I think about my first days as a teacher, which would be 1988, Brooklyn, New York City. I think about it probably daily. And me going into this field, this profession, this mission, it really had nothing to do with some goal I had. We set goals that we wanted to accomplish, whatever. It really had nothing to do with that. For me, it was a responsibility. It was an obligation. It was something I felt that I got certain things within me that I need to impart to others. And that's the only reason I went into this profession. That's the only reason I'm still in it to this day, from 88 to 2022, right? I love everything you said. Hey, let's go, y'all. Now, keep in mind, let me say to everybody on the panel, I was over ambitious in writing these questions. So just be mindful that when you answer, I still got a lot to go, right? So I'm gonna try not to keep us here all day. But Dr. Baker, the title of your essay, In Fighting the Good Fight, Standing and Fighting for What is Right, being a courageous school leader. Not only did it resonate with me, but I felt that it spoke to me, right? I had to be that courageous leader. Now, did I get into trouble? Of course I did. I got into deep trouble. I got into media trouble for having the audacity to be that courageous leader. But within that, you said one must be solidly rooted in exactly what it is that the leader stands for and believes. I want to say that to you again. One must be solidly rooted in exactly what it is that the leader stands for and believes. And as folks know, with this particular book, I read passages, right? Because this fighting the good fight that you all are in is so powerful. So let me read this quick passage for the benefit of the audience, and particularly the assistant principals who tune in every week. Significantly, you said the title of this chapter is Standing and Fighting for What is Right, Being a Courageous Leader. The what is emphasized because in order to be a courageous leader, you said, one must be solidly rooted in exactly what it is the leader stands for and believes. The process and act of precisely identifying this what is the core of leadership. Your what will certainly be informed by your life events and will be powered by the willingness to stand strong and alone when necessary. As a courageous leader, let your name, integrity, and word stand on its own merit. So with that said, I got this question for you. What is Amber Baker's so solidly rooted in and that you stand for and believe? What is your what?
I guess my what would not guess. My what would be social justice, right? You cannot be in any arena and not understand that we will not fully receive that which we are due and owed without a fight. Nobody's going to give us anything. So we've got to go into that space and fight for and take what's ours. When you're in a room, you know, oftentimes we hear about trying to make people feel comfortable with what we have to say. Well, I would take exception with that. It's neither our responsibility to make them feel comfortable with the tough conversations, nor is it our responsibility to educate them. The only obligation we have is to speak truth, right? And so in speaking truth, some people in that room is going to be uncomfortable, but it's going to move the conversation. So that's who I am. And in the end, you may not like me. I tell people, but you're going to always know where I stand. And I'm always going to try to be as authentic as possible. And even in this new role, people, you know, they're always looking for the angle because after all, that's what it's about. But it is no angle. I'm telling you up front what I'm about. And when it comes to my babies and my family, I'm going to fight you like I used to fight in the streets, except I got the words, the knowledge, and the information. So I don't run away from the things that has made me who I am. And like I said in my book title, if you're not willing to stand alone, to pay a price, right? I probably should have been a superintendent by now, or at least an assistant superintendent in my district. But I was willing to pay that price because you're not going to continue to bulldoze over our Black babies in schools. You're just not. So that's what I am. That's what I'm about. That's who I am and what I'm about. And no matter what arena I'm in, I'm bringing it just like that.
So, Dr. Baker, I'm on your staff. I'm one of the teachers, right?
Yes.
And you're my principal who is firmly rooted in what you believe in and stand for. And you articulated here that it's social justice. But Dr. Baker, that's not my world. I'm on your staff. I'm one of your teachers, and I don't agree with this. This sounds radical. This sounds militant. You're in a different space. You know, I'm this fictitious T. I don't want someone on here to think, man, where he go? So now, Dr. Baker, how do you bring me closer to your way of thinking when I'm in a very different space?
So you got two options to you, right? I used to always tell teachers and people on my administrative team, you always have a choice. You can either lean into the mission, the vision, and the purpose that the leadership is placing before you, and trust that they're taking you in a direction that's going to strengthen you, better you as an administrator. And definitely, if you are not a person of color that's in a school where, like mine, where 100% of my children were minorities and 100% was on free and reduced, but my staff was blended, right? So you can either lean into that, because we're going to be having some tough conversations around that, right? And we're going to do it in a way that respects what you bring to the table, but it's also going to require that you respect what everybody else brings to the table. And hey, if it's not your cup of tea, in the district that I was in, there was 52 other elementary schools. Pick one, because I'm sure that there is one that is available for you to go in there and be comfortable in your ignorance. And I say ignorance in a sense that you're always going to have children of color in your space, even in a school where it might be 98% of your population are non-minority and 2% minority. You still run the risk of having a child of color. So you could still benefit from the work that we're doing in my building.
And you know, I asked that question and spent so much time on it, Doc, because you know that that's real world. All four of us know that.
Absolutely.
And I know that I've had individuals on staff who are looking at me sideways when I'm talking my talk. And I know that as the organization, whether they leave, if they're here, I gotta bring them around. Yes, because sir. At the end of the day, they're in that classroom with, the terminology that you use, that I tend to use, my babies.
Right.
So I got to make sure I got the right people in this. I appreciate everything you just said. And by the way, folks, feel free to jump in on questions that are not delivered to you if you feel that spirit that I want to jump in here and address that too, right? You know, the floor is open. Floor is open.
And I would also say too, well, you know this. I mean, we've been colleagues and mentors and friends to each other. I was doing the math in my head for almost 20 years. You've seen me in two different arenas in two different districts, and we've kept in contact over the years. And you've never seen me be anything but, right. So your delivery, and this is what I need to say to everyone. My delivery may change depending on whose room I'm in, but my truth doesn't. Right. So when I'm in a room full of my parents from my hood, I live in the community where I was the principal, right? I live in that community. I don't live in the suburbs. So when I'm kicking it with my parents and I'm talking to my babies and I'm walking the streets and I'm doing that message is the same message that I have with my friends in the out in the suburbs or when I'm in meetings. Same message. Different delivery. So you still got to know how to code switch, but don't compromise your message.
I call it protecting one's truth. And that's essentially what you're saying. Jaken, am I pronouncing that right in terms of this? Let me hear you say it again.
Yes, it's Jaken.
Yeah, and I want to make sure I use y'all's them degrees too. So
Jaken is fine.
Interchanging, right?
It's cool.
So, but your essay in Fighting the Good Fight, and for those of you that don't know the book, here it is. It's Fighting the Good Fight. It's about 35 different school leaders that have contributed to this book. Yours truly wrote the endorsement on the cover. And if you don't have this, like I said in the endorsement, it's a must read. There's nothing quite like this ever written, right? So if you don't have it, get it. I love reading this book when I'm preparing because there's just a lot of great stuff in here. So with that said, the essay you wrote is called Time Well Served. And you wrote a lot about your younger days that you talked about earlier today as a young Black male. And you had a passage that I wanted to share as well. So bear with me for a second, folks. You said, today I'm grateful for a strong maternal household that constantly stressed the importance of an education. To survive in my community while growing up, I want y'all to hear this, I often had to hide the love for reading, learning, and mathematics. Therefore, in school, my grades suffered as well as my self-esteem. That resonated with me. So there was an experience that you had. This was your experience as a youth, but in 2022, Doc, that's still the experience of many Black youth who are sitting in that classroom, valedictorian material, but I can't let you know how brilliant I am because I got other eyes on me and I got certain reputation and I can't let you know of my ambition academically, etc., all that stuff. So with that, why did you, as so many Black boys across America, why did you feel often that you needed to hide your love for reading, your love for learning, your love for mathematics? What is that all about?
You know, from working in the environment that I work in and from my personal experiences, you know, to be educated or to be articulate still makes you different. It makes you stand out like a sore thumb. And also, unfortunately, in the Black community, sometimes it makes you seem weak, or it makes you seem that you're a punk or you're a clown, as the young people like to say in the environment where I am. Mm-hmm. So you hide it because you don't want people to think that you're weak. You don't want to be the one who's going to be picked out to be picked on. You know, and it's unfortunate, you know, that oftentimes we have to bout with that and fight with that, because a lot of our intellects and our talented 10th are sitting behind the wall and sitting in prison. And it's not until that point that they realize, you know, wow, you know, me being educated doesn't make me weak. It doesn't make me a sucker. You know, it actually helps me to be able to have and lead a productive life. You know, so often, you know, we hide it, you know, because sometimes, you know, we do have difficulties with learning. Like for instance, with me, just to be transparent, I had issues with mathematics. So in class, when the teacher would pick me out to do certain problems, and particularly with geometry, I was going to stir up trouble, or I was going to get in trouble in order to get put out of class, or in order to give a dramatic performance as I exit, you know, because, you know, I didn't understand, and I was too afraid because of my peers to ask, because I didn't want to appear to be, you know, dumb or stupid as well, you know. So it's sort of it's two-pronged. It can come from so many areas as to why we hide the issues when we have the ability to be great, you know. So it's like the constantly of not wanting people to you know, look at me differently. Already I sound different, I act different, you know. I'm a guy who's not really into sports and all of that, and contact and all of that, you know. So then to speak differently, or for people to always constantly see me with a book, or constantly see me reading, you know, it was something that, you know, just like not wearing Jordans during that time would cause you to be able to be picked out again, to be picked on. So it made me want to hide. And I believe it makes that many in our community, it makes them want to hide. They don't want people to know that they can read and they can comprehend, you know. So they hide behind what they call jumping off of the porch, you know. They get out there, you know, we get out there and do the things that we think are going to make us popular and going to make us cool, which a lot of times, a lot of those things, selling drugs, take a lot of academic prowess that what many of them don't realize. You know, you have to be able to do mathematics, you have to be able to do science, you have to be able to have organizational structure. So those are skills that can be used wisely, you know. So yeah.
So Dr. Caston, and by the way, my guy here, Elmani Viney. Hey, Elmani, I want you to get this book, because Dr. Flowers, who's sitting here, where you talk about imposter syndrome, his whole essay, that's what it's about, right? So Elmani, that I got on the screen there, pick up this Fight in the Good Fight book. So Dr. Caston, I'm thinking about the folks in the audience on this question. The most of them are probably assistant principals and aspiring administrators.
Okay.
But we also have teachers that tune in that have no interest in administration. They just tune in, and then we got the principals, the new principal, etc. So my question is this: there's a whole lot of Jakins sitting in classrooms throughout the course of every week in the school year who are also hiding their desire to read, to learn, to do mathematics, etc. My question to you then is, how does, in terms of your perspective, how does that teacher discern, identify that student who is sitting there brilliant, but feels internally a need not to let anybody know? How does that teacher identify that youngster? And as a matter of fact, if I can just interrupt that question for a second, Doc, I go to a lot of different kinds of meetings that are held in schools where there's students in the auditorium, right? Like an assembly. I don't mean me solely as a speaker. I may be there as an observer. And it's one of those schools that's predominantly white, but that little small smattering of Black children. So maybe 10 in the room, right? 12 in the room. And I'm always locked in on them, right? It's almost like they're the only ones I see, because I'm wondering, like, what is the experience of being them in that environment where there's zero Black teachers, there's zero Black any adults, but those 10 or 12 amongst 1,000 kids, they're sitting there. And I'm always wondering, because I'm not going to get into my story here because this is y'all's day, but I was that kid in my last high school. I attended 4 high schools. So in that last high school, I was that kid. And I felt invisible. I was swallowed up by that. Right. And I didn't dare emerge because it was just too overwhelming. So my question, I just wanted to throw that at you, but I want to go back to the question. How does that teacher discern and identify that this could be a reality for a given student sitting in my classroom?
I think it's one word: relationships. Rapport. You have to know your students. You have to listen to the things that they say. You have to take, at Hopkins, we learned about surveys and inventories that you take about their interests and show an interest in the things that they have an interest in. I mean, even right now, not even working with children, working with adults, with the population that I have to constantly figure out how I'm going to reach these people who are sometimes serial murderers, killers, drug dealers, kingpins, all types. How am I going to reach this man who is serving a 38-year sentence, and the state is mandating for him to come to school, and this is his second year on a 38-year bid? But when I began to develop relationships and see the things that they like, for example, the perfect example right now, I have an individual who was an artist and liked to draw. So what I did was, through that interest, his teacher said, I'm getting frustrated with him because all he wants to do is draw in my class and he's not paying attention. Well, we have to tap into that, so I began to allow him to be able to just draw around the school. We have I'm very into thematic units. So it's October, it's Halloween. We're trying to make a very monotonous and dry place have a little bit of life through education, because, we want to maintain and keep our numbers up, but really utilizing his skills. And then when I saw that he was into it, then I began to find reading material based around that. Hey, the Day of the Dead is coming up. That's artful. It's colorful. Let's begin to do these things and show him the Festival of la Gente que vive en Mexico. So the people that live in Mexico, so now he's seeing colors. Now he's been able to make those connections. The bulletin board is interactive. So we ask people, what are you afraid of? So when they put the words up, we now take those words, and I want you to take those words and I want you to put them into artistic expression, because that's really in the synthesis area. Bloom's taxonomy is just coming out through art, so we have to realize that it's no cookie cutter way with teaching and reaching even those children in the audience. You have to know those that are in those white spaces where it's limited Blacks. You have to be responsible for finding things that they connect to, just knowing them the same way you have to do with the white ones, because I've taught in environments where I was, all of the students were Caucasian as well. And I had to realize that I had to tap, how am I going to teach them as a Black man? I'm not from there. I'm from the projects. These people, parents are paying $40,000 a year for them to be in his school. What connection do I have with them? But again, it was through inventory, learning about their interests, showing the interest and wanting to know about the things that they do and how they do them, drew them into me and made it easier for me to be able to teach them and to reach them and to be able to give them Spanish, and you'll be amazed on how much you will get from just through relationship and relationship development, which is very important within the classroom, with building that academic rapport with students, and it's not anything major, anything that's inappropriate. It's just something as simple as, me showing up as a Black Spanish teacher. Do you know how many people, me in the prison as a Black principal, they're like, you are a principal? We've never seen this when we've been locked up anywhere. Yeah. Yes, you can be a principal. You speak Spanish? Yes, you can speak Spanish, and then begin to show them people who, I talk about the Garifuna people and Afro-Latinos, it wasn't until I got out of college that I even realized there was Black people who spoke Spanish as a predominant language. And I definitely didn't know that there was a place in Africa that the official language was Spanish until it was my own research, you know. So just finding out what people like, knowing your students, when you see certain things, pull it out of them. You see leadership. When I was in school, I had teachers who knew I loved Spanish because it came easy to me and I didn't have to study for it, allowed me to teach, allowed me to be in front of the class and allow me to lead. And it'll make them into what you play and what you emulate.
That's some powerful stuff you said. It's you know, with everything you said, it goes back to your initial response when you said relationships. Right? How do I take you to that next level and I don't even know you?
Yes.
But the other piece that really resonated with me was when you talked about, and folks who are on here regularly, they probably would know where I'm going. When you talked about showing up in the room as this Black man that's teaching Spanish, and folks are not accustomed to seeing that, or this Black male principle in the environment in which you lead. And you know, that's my experience as a speaker in a lot of places, you know, because people talk to me privately and I've never seen a Black man doing professional development before. And there tends to be in some spaces some discomfort with me being there because it doesn't speak to the narrative that they have up here. Right. So man, we can go all day on every one of these questions with y'all, man. Let me keep going, man, because y'all get me excited here. Jamon, Dr. Flowers, the battle within is the name of your essay in Fighting the Good Fight. And I want to read a passage that you open up with here. It's the first thing you said, and it caught my attention in a big way. Elmani Viney, I want you to hear this. He said, "This narrative depicts my experience as a successful African-American principal navigating my journey to overcome perfectionism, conquer a fear of failure, and disable a workaholic mind frame, which are three concepts associated with imposter syndrome." When I read that, Jamon, I said, perfectionism. Yeah, that was me. Fear of failure. Yeah, that was me. Workaholic. That's still me, right? It's you know, so you know, let's jump into it. In the context of being a Black principal, and I know you break this up into then and later with liberation. I want us, we're gonna get to the liberation, so don't even address that. In the context of being a Black principal, why did you feel the pressure to be perfect?
For many of them, I was the first and possibly the only Black principal that they have encountered. When I say them, I'm not only talking about students, I'm talking about parents. So it was something that I didn't need to be reminded that I was Black. I had to tell a couple of parents that several times, but it was something that I knew that was going to be judged relentlessly. And I knew that everything that I said, whether it was orally or written, or everything that I did or did not do, was going to be relentlessly judged based off of my skin color. So for me, in addition to that societal pressure, but also pressure that I inflicted on myself too, in the sense of that I had to be the best, the perfect leader. And this all goes back to even being a student, you know, when Jakeem was talking about, you know, being, you know, hiding that whole piece about love and literature, you know, I had to do the same thing. Now, my mom was an adamant about me having books in my hand and things like that. And really, I tribute her for, you know, sparking that love for literature, but also it took me away for different spots. I'm from a rural area. You know, my noise were cows and chickens and things like that. So I needed something that would take me to different places. So that really sparked that piece. But I know I couldn't bring that my whole self into my school because, you know, I would get picked on, and not just, you know, picked on by Black and whites. It's like, you know, the nerd and all this other stuff, even down to honors and AP courses and things like that. But I had a mom who would not compromise on that. So there's certain things, and that carried over to being a teacher, to being, you know, making sure that I was the best teacher, that, you know, at one time I had this whole idea that all my students were going to pass the standardized test the first time. I was going to be that teacher that hit all of my students. Well, let me tell you that did not happen. In my first year teaching, after that first period class, I was like, okay, let's go back to reality. But then when I became, you know, an administrator, I saw how others looked at me. My white peers were easily forgiven for some of the mistakes that they made. I wasn't always forgiven for mistakes I made, you know, whether I forgot to put a comma in a letter or something like that. You know, I had people to report to my supervisor, hey, he's incompetent. So all those things boiled down to, I had to make sure that whatever I was doing, that I did it to the best of my ability. So it's not necessarily that I felt like when we think about imposter syndrome, sometimes people think about they don't feel like they belong. You know, now don't get me wrong, there are spaces where I felt like I don't belong here, but I have matured into that. I'm here for a reason, you know, and I capitalize on that. But for me, it was just making sure that I was perfect and working to the point of exhaustion. I remember there were days as a principal, I would wake up on the floor, still in my suit and tie, and it was about 4 a.m.
Wow.
I hadn't even gotten to bed yet. You know, I remember as a principal sending emails. And when I thought about it, I sent it, you know, and I had to fall back on that because I started having APs respond or teachers respond immediately. So I had to check myself on that particular piece. I wasn't tech savvy enough to put a timer on it. Even down to not even seeing my family and participating as my family. You know, that I chose the career and doing certain things as like, I have to be at everything to everyone else except myself and my family. So I just felt like the whole workaholism, I still struggle with that sometimes, you know, every now and then, you know, I try to block off time and say, okay, Fridays is my day. That doesn't always happen, but just working to the point of exhaustion and working basically 7 days a week in order to ensure that I was perfect, which I thought I had to be perfect. You know, no one told me that, but just the way people treated me, the way people responded to me. Even down to the way I articulated. I love what Dr. Baker said, you know, my message doesn't same, but my approach, the way I led one school that was predominantly white was different the way I led a school that was predominantly black, but still, I still put that pressure on myself because I had to find myself, you know, finding that balance. So not only being perfect, but being perfect for all communities. And sometimes that pressure came from my own black community. Is that, you know, sometimes they were looking for hand-me-outs, or, you know, sometimes they were the most unforgiving people for mistakes and things like that. So I was just like, man, I can't win for losing. And it even got down to, it impacted my health, physical health, emotionally and all that. Whereas just like, it became so unhealthy that I really thank God for a village, because they was like, listen, you need to step back and do certain things. So this whole imposter syndrome, you know, created by society in my head, but also putting a lot of stuff, you know, a lot of pressure on me was almost detrimental, not only for my career, but personally.
That's powerful. You know, the perfectionism, I've come a long way. The fear of failure, I've come a long way. Mm-hmm. But that workaholic, no counter progress. You know, I don't know what you all would know about my work, but I live on the road. You know, I'm a speaker, I'm a consultant, so I'm on airplanes. I do about 200 plus presentations a year. But when I took on this platform, you all know, you got the emails from me like Sunday or Monday. I've been planning this presentation since last weekend. Mm-hmm. I got to read y'all stuff. I got to digest it. Right. Mm-hmm. It's not like it's going to be a check coming my way. Right. Mm-hmm. It's just, this is just what I do. So what I'm saying to you, I work my butt off. But mm-hmm. the reason I haven't rectified it is because I haven't gotten to a point where I dislike it. Right. Mm-hmm. In terms of the work, I love working. Right. So I can pay attention to a football game on Sunday better if I got my computer in front of me than if I don't have my computer in front of me. I'll probably fall asleep on the game. Right. And I look forward to the game. So at some point I'll reconcile that, but now it ain't there. Anybody want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I heard too. I want to jump in real quick. It was a couple of things that I heard that is particularly important to me that I had to overcome as an African American leader. Whether you're a leader in your classroom, a leader in the building, administrator, one of the things that we often suffer from is trying to be all things to all people at all times, right? And then understanding that we will always be held disproportionately to a different standard. That the meter that is used for our non-white colleagues is not our meter. We're going to oftentimes be put in I will say in my district and in several other districts I've worked in, oftentimes we are placed in the hardest schools, expected to do the greatest amount of work with an increased workload, with less resources and less grace or understanding about the assignment that has been given to us. And then thirdly, I have inboxed Doc about this. We have got to find balance. So I heard Doc say about my health. I know Principal Kafele has had some health challenges. Jakin, you appear to be young, so your youthfulness may be protecting you from some health related challenges associated with work. So this is my advice. We've got to find balance, because like you, I have gone home and literally could not put my foot on the gas pedal to take me home, because we leave it in the school, on the court, as you say, almost all day, every day. So we have got to force ourselves to find balance, because if we don't, our bodies are going to make us find that balance. The work is never ending. So we're never going to get to a place where we can say, finally, the work is done. So we've got to find balance. And we've got to remember that we cannot be all things to all people at all times. And thirdly, it is lonely being an administrator, but you need to have one or two people that on those days where you need to be encouraged, because you're the chief encourager, that you can call and be transparent with and say, you know what, help me through this day. Because we can't do that with our staff. And we have to be each other's champions and cheerleaders. And to my women out there, I know we got some more to go, but I got to give this to you while I have it. Your light and your crown and your season has nothing to do with the next queen's time and turn and season. So don't hate when it's not your time and turn. Make sure that your sister's crown is straight, her light is polished, so that when it's your time and your turn, you got a whole champion of people that's in your corner saying, go, 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 right? Don't be jealous because your time is coming, but be patient because it's your time and your turn. All right, I turn it back over to you, Doc.
I'm looking at the comments, and I think they want you to just keep preaching now. So, but let me keep going, because I still got a lot, y'all. I'm gonna stay with you, Amber. Dr. Baker, you indicated that you lead by the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., where he said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere."
Yeah.
And you stated that there's no place truer, that this is truer than educating Black children.
Absolutely.
And it begins with countering the systemic injustices that they have to endure. So here's my question to you. Let me go back to the statement that Dr. King made. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So with that being sort of a foundation for you, to lead according to that quote, what does that look like?
you know, it looks like for me, initially being exposed to a principal that clearly, if I had got into the fight that I got into 40 years ago, that I would have been expelled, a 365-year expulsion. So y'all just imagine what that fight was, right?
Yeah.
But he chose not to. And I wasn't the exception to the rule. My boyfriend at the time was smoking weed on the bus ramp. He didn't suspend him either. He had to transfer schools, but he didn't put him out of school. So as administrators, man, we are the kings and queens of our own castle, our own kingdom. And so we can make decisions about how we're going to justly deal with children that doesn't involve criminalization, does not involve suspensions, does not involve necessarily finding ways to stare them into the prison pipeline, right? So, and you can still be just as long as you're consistent. And you have to understand how to teach others around you to do that, right? So for my teachers, the first month of school, you can't call me or any of the other administrators. Build a relationship with your students and your families. And find ways within your classroom to empower students to want to do their best. And when they make a mistake, use that as a teaching moment. Right? Don't give away your power. So as administrators, we have the right to not give away our power. Now, when it is something that you clearly have to act on, you know, and it has to be pretty severe, a gun or a threat or something like that, we don't have that's pretty black and white. But all of that other stuff is kind of gray. And so that's my way of doing that. That's how I went from 195 students at the school I started at to over 500. And at one point, 70% was male. Because our parents were out in the streets talking about, man, you need to take your baby over to Kimberly. My boy doing good over there. I don't get calls. And you know what? We built a culture that said we believe in you, right? So you have to take that culturally relevant piece, right? You have to teach those white kids that he may be Daquan in this building, but there is a place for Day-Day in them streets. So when he comes in this building, yeah, he got to pull up his pants. He got to take his hat off. He got to say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. He got to look people in the eyes, shake their hands, use proper English, because that's Daquan. That's the leader that we're building him to be. But when he walks out that door and his hat goes to the back and his pants get pulled down and you hear the broken English, don't judge that. Because that's what he's got to do to survive, right? And so that's for everybody in our building. That's the daddies. That's the mamas.
That's right.
That's the teachers. You don't get to come in my building with no cargo pants on and graphic tees and flip-flops. You're going to put on some clothes because you're a licensed professional.
I thought it was just me. There you go.
And so you can't talk to me about no bonnets or talk to me about parents coming in pajama bottoms and you look crazy. You don't get to do that. And you don't get to judge what you don't understand. And when the expectation is lovingly enforced and it's clear, right? After a while, you don't have to do the work. Because your parents would say, man, you can't go up in there looking like that. Miss Dr. Baker is what they call me. We're going to get you. You need to go home and change. Well, I don't even have to get her because you just did. Or finding ways for your families to be successful, right? They got EBT cards. You need snacks in your class? Talk to your parents. You got an assembly going on, daddies. Now, you know, black women, we take over. Don't want to, but I need y'all to put the chairs up for me. Okay, daddies, can y'all take the trash out? Guess what? Those black men that have been beat down and everybody tells them they don't have any value. Thank you, Daddy, for coming in here this morning, having breakfast with your babies, walking your child in every day. you are building this sense of community not within and without the school. Because they come in there and then they feel this sense of connection and they'll do whatever they can. But you've got to be open enough to find ways for them to be successful at the situation that they are currently in, understanding that that's not where they're always going to be.
Hey, Doc, let me jump in here because I got a part B I want to throw at you based on everything you just said. There is, and again, this is me always considering the core audience to this platform. So there's an aspiring administrator or an assistant principal who yearns to become a principal, who is listening to you and holding on to every syllable that you articulate. But that same person is asking the question, but how do I, because I know how Dr. Baker does it, but how do I navigate the politics? How do I navigate the resistance? How do I navigate the racism? How do I navigate the obstacles surrounding being the courageous leader that Dr. Baker is? How am I able to be that person in my world?
Got it. So let me tell you this. If you're not the principal, it's not your building.
If I'm talking about when they become principal one day.
Okay. No. But the question was, as the AP, how do they navigate this? Right. So right now, as the AP, you are not the principal. It is not your building. So what you have to do is respect the principal's way of doing things. And what you have to do is to navigate that and try to mitigate as much as you can without overstepping your boundaries, right? Because it's not your school. You're not the principal. And this is going to be hard to hear. Mm-hmm. If you're not vibing with what's going on in that building, you got to find another one. Because if your principal has not given you permission to speak freely and to speak honestly to them, which it took me a while to be able to do that, because that means that your ego got to be out of the way. But if the person who is closest to you cannot be authentic with you and to help you see your blind spots, that's not a partnership you want to continue to be in anyway. Mm-hmm. Because that means that person that is the principal is not respecting of you as a professional. And so there were times where my AP would say some things that was really hard to hear. But because we had worked together so long, and I'm not married, so for you married folks, y'all can confirm this. One of the things about, to me, being in a healthy relationship and being married and being with somebody for a long period of time is not everything is going to be yay and amen, but there's a bonding, a melting of those two people that you have a rhythm. And that when you're popping on all syllables, you guys are moving at the same, probably if you put your hands on each other's heartbeat, they're beating at the same time. When you find the right team, when you're a part of the right partnership, that's what a good, healthy administrative team looks like. And so that means that you're going to be looking out for each other and you're going to learn from each other. And if you are not in that situation, it's like a bad church. Don't stay trying to change the pastor. Just find another church. Yeah. But take whatever you learn from that experience, even if it's bad stuff. When you get into your building, you're going to say, okay, I know I don't want to do those things, but here's the things that I want to do. So that's what I would say. If you don't see a pathway forward where you could be respected and be able to speak freely and be able to advocate for your students without losing your job, because you need a job, then you gotta start looking and be willing. If you're married, talk to your mate. Sometimes moving is the blessing that you need for promotion. And oftentimes we don't give ourselves permission to do that.
And as everybody knows that watches this on a regular, that's exactly what I did. I had to get up out of one and go to another so that I could be authentic Principal Kafele. Mm-hmm. Dr. Caston, you got this you got this passage here that I want to read before I ask you this question. You said it appears that the criminal justice system is winning the war against education when it comes to enrollment in the housing of males of color in the United States. Many fathers, sons, brothers, and cousins are incarcerated for charges ranging from petty crimes to murder. The United States makes up 5% of the world's population and imprisons approximately a quarter of its people. Mm-hmm. With that said, Dr. Caston, first, what is the message that you're conveying to the reader when you say the criminal justice system is winning the war against education when it comes to the enrollment and the housing of males of color?
Because as college enrollment, school enrollments are constantly declining, we're finding that the populace in prisons is constantly growing, constantly rising. You know, if you don't have education, and all of my research shows that education is the best way to reduce recidivism. You have to be exposed, you have to have experience. So if you're not getting a good education, you know, majority of that population that's in there are non-graduates. You know, if you're looking at, let's look at the area of special education and all these misdiagnoses, how we're allowing our children to be misdiagnosed for the purpose of sometimes, you know, getting checks or trying to get on disability, and you're having your child identified as intellectually disabled, and they're believing that they're actually disabled, and then they come in prison, and this very individual who has this marcation on their life is able to get a GED in a matter of 3 months, which was the quickest, you know, which was, you know, one of the fastest I had ever seen done before. You know, also looking at how we're misdiagnosing in regards to, so to give you some statistics from behind the fence, you know, when I'm sitting in these IEP meetings for adults, almost 85% or above of them have been marked as emotionally disturbed, which in my eyes is an identifier for those who are going to prison. You know, so when we get these diagnoses and things, we have to make sure that we're putting things and supports in place in order to stop, as Dr. Baker said, that school to prison pipeline. You know, because, you know, we have to make sure that we're understanding that there are consequences that come with certain behaviors. And when we talk about academics is not just reading, writing, and arithmetic, but also social, emotional, and behavior. And behaviors, you have to know how to conduct yourself. You have to be socialized. You know, I look at us with all these puppies and things. We socialize our pets more so than we do our children, and taking them in environments where they can learn how to conduct themselves, as Dr. Pickle said, to say yes, to say no, to say thank you, to be polite, because sometimes it's not what you know, it's going to be your kindness and your charm. I know that about myself. I don't always believe me to be the brightest light bulb in the bunch, but I'm a charming individual because of my mother and grandmother. I know how to conduct myself. That's particularly with women, you know. So sometimes it's my charm, you know, and my ability to put together nice clothing and know that there's space in places. You know, when I go to church, I look this way. When I go to work, I look that way. When I'm going to the nightclub, I'm going to look this way. You know, to understand that we have to be chameleons, and particularly when you're Black in America, you know, these are things that you can learn through education, how to code switch. You know, we talked about code switch, and I have to do that right now. My family get annoyed when I speak standardly. You know, my own mother would tell me, don't talk to me like that. You know, I go home and mess with her and say, you know, good morning, mother. And she'll say, boy, you better stop playing with me. You know, so I have to use my more Southern dialect with her and my grandmother and my grandparents and with my father, you know, but teaching them but there's a time and a place for everything. When I was sitting in PWIs at Virginia Commonwealth University and Johns Hopkins, they weren't going to be able to appreciate me speaking the way that I speak. I'm more comfortable when I'm down south, down in the South with my family and with my peers. You know, so all of these things come through education and helping them to understand that there's a multiplicity of ways through education that you can be successful. We're all not going to be LeBron James, but you can be. There's nothing wrong with a vocation. The great thing, even with my family, we have vocations that we can do, hair and thick plumbing and bookkeeping and all type of things, and degrees as well. And there's some of us who choose to be in the vocation because it makes more money. So being able to identify what education is, because it's not just going to college. You know, that's not the only way you can be successful. You can be successful by you know, I was at a conference not too long ago, and Google said there's not a lack of jobs. We don't have people who have the skills to be able to do the jobs that we need. Right. So helping our children to not be afraid of mathematics. I sit and talk with, and I see that he's on here. Shout out to one of my teachers that's watching, Mr. Platt. You know, we sit and we talk all the time about mathematics. He loves to teach mathematics, and to see these men so afraid to try to sit to get through understanding these concepts, you know, when realizing I had to tell them the other day, even with a felon, if you go out here and you can do computer coding, if you know how to speak the language of the computer network system and Cisco management and A+ certification, guess what? Your background will no longer matter because they're going to need you, my brother. So take the opportunity the same way you because they're transferable skills that they already have that they don't realize that they have it. In order to concentrate and be able to learn how to wreak havoc, that takes some time. To be able to duck and dodge the police for as long as some of you did, that takes some prowess. So you can do the same thing with attacking mathematics, science, and technology, and helping them to grow in those areas, helping them to put in the practice, put in the time to build them up, you know, to understand that they too can be astronauts. They can be, you know, you have a better statistic being a mathematician than you do getting in the NFL or your YouTube album going platinum. That's not an everyday occurrence. You have a better chance of being a teacher. You have a better chance of being a lawyer and attorney. You know, I look at so many, they call them jailhouse attorneys, where they have people with no law degrees they're able to get convictions overturned without a jurisprudence, whatever it's JD doctorate. They're able to do it from sitting in there and studying long enough. They're able to get things overturned. They're able to do things. So we have to begin to show them they don't have to be afraid of education. You don't have to be afraid to sound a particular way. You can learn foreign languages. You can learn mathematics. You can learn to be a plumber. You can do whatever it is that you want to do, you know, but having some form of education behind you, because those are also avenues in which they use to keep us out. They're not going to look out for you with a principalship and you don't have your credentials. They're not going to allow you that time. Unfortunately, you're going to have the top education, top experience. And guess what? They'll interview you and still tell you no. So you don't want that to be the reason as to why you're not able to even get to have the opportunity to sit at those tables. I sit and tell the men all the time, I have a doctorate degree and no felon. Thank God I've been able to stay out of the system, but I'm constantly overlooked and told that I'm not qualified enough, or I don't have experience. I'm not the person that you're just not a good fit for this space. So you don't want credentialing to be a reason as to why they're telling you no.
Woo! You said a lot there, man. I want to stay with you too. You know, I keep saying it. I'm thinking about them folks out there watching who want to be in your shoes. Talk to us, Dr. Caston. You know, let me read the sentence again. It appears that the criminal justice system is winning the war against education. Let me give it this context. I used to speak in the juvenile detention facility in Essex County, New Jersey, which would be Newark, New Jersey, every week. So I'd lead my school, and then before going home, once or twice a week, I'd go down there and talk to the young men for about an hour. So I was a middle school principal at the time. I went on and became a high school principal. And when I went back down there later, I found that there were students of mine who used to be my students who had graduated, who are now incarcerated. And they would be glad to see me. And they Mr. Kafele, there's my old principal and all that kind of thing. So it was a mixed emotion. It was on the one hand, you're always glad to see the former students, but not in that setting, right? You're always glad when they're excited to see you, but not in that setting. So what it said to me, it kind of made it clear to me that there are students sitting in our classrooms who there's a chance, and the data that you shared, I'm gonna get to that on my next question to you, right? In terms of that 1 in 3, 1 in 17, and so forth. But it made it clear to me that in any given school, there's a percentage of young people based on data who are going to wind up in that facility. So therefore, Dr. Caston, what are the implications for the leader that's watching now that needs to have that kind of that level of understanding, but what can that leader put in place to say, I know what the data says. I got a large percentage of kids in this building who may wind up in the system at some point soon. How do I proceed differently?
So how do you? So I think that those, I think about Dr. Jawanza Kungufu, who was one of my mentors, a young.
He's the man.
Student. Yes, indeed. And he talks about that third grade special education number and how it's used as a projection as to how many prisons will be in the next 15 to 20 years, So as a leader, I think it's important to think about that special education process and to really take that seriously. I'm not sitting on a team and you're ready to identify somebody as mentally retarded. Right. Me as a reading specialist, no, this boy not mentally retarded. You're just not able to teach and to reach him. So we're not going to be giving incorrect misdiagnosis in schools. We have to make sure that before you come and sit at the table, let's sit and look at the teacher. What have you done in order to supplement? What have you done in order to offer remediation and interventions for this individual and have proofs of that? What have you put in place? Have you talked to the reading specialist, the mathematics specialist? Have you talked to the parents in order to begin to have conversation? All of these things are very important with that special education data, because when we look at it, it's these children who are the ones that are coming, the ones who can't read, the ones who can't write, the ones who don't have the vocabulary to be able to express why they're lashing out. That's why many of them are emotionally disturbed. They don't have the vocabulary as to tell you why they're angry. So what do? They do what they know. They fight, they cuss, because that vocabulary, they hear that a lot. They can use that fluently, but they don't know how to tell you that I'm not able to, Miss McGillicuddy, I'm not able to concentrate right now because I didn't get any sleep last night because they were fighting. My neighbors were fighting, right. Or I didn't know where my mom or my parent was. They don't know how to vocalize that. So we have to be able to look at some of those practices, make sure that we're doing everything that we can do within our rights with that due process before we are labeling these children. And even if they have to take on the label, it is important as an administrator that you share with parents to make sure that it's being implemented to fidelity, making sure that they're doing their part as parents. And as soon as the child is able to be diagnosed again, they should be diagnosed again so that stigma can be removed from the child if they no longer need it, and that can happen. I've seen it done with children who need them in place so that they can have legal accommodations within the classroom. But as that child began to do better, as that child began to take a interest into school and we began to see them go up, we were able to then call a meeting again and have that label removed, because they may not need it for the rest of their academic career, but if they do, then you want to make sure that it is valid and that it's real, and we're just not taking all of the bad kids and trying to get them a one-on-one. We have to do better than that. We have to find ways in order to tap. Have we tried and looked at extracurricular activities? Have we had the social worker to look in the home to see if it's a resource that the family is in need of that is causing the distraction and the inability of this child to grasp what is happening before them? Is the teacher in their plans? Are there remediations that can be noted with this teacher? And not just saying that you did things, but you really have a portfolio of this child's work that we can begin to look at to see where there hasn't been any change under the tutelage of your well-instructed and well-planning in order to reach the holistic child and the entire class in its entirety.
Wow. Dr. Caston, you just used that word plans, and it struck a nerve, because with the work I do, I probably would have never known this if I wasn't doing this work, but because I do the work that I do traveling, there are districts across the country
don't require lesson planning.
Lesson planning as irrelevant, obsolete, no need for them. I was working with a district over the summer, which I will not name, and it was a long-term contract. And lesson planning had nothing to do with my services there, but it came up in discussion. And I spoke my mind, and they said, we will not need your services anymore. right? It's because I don't know how, not only teaching and learning, but I don't know how you do anything in life without a plan. I don't know. So I can't, so when I hear that, I gotta speak to it, even if it's not part of my contractual obligation. I gotta speak my mind on it, because there's got, as you just so eloquently said, there's got to be a plan for that youngster.
But why wouldn't it be a part of your contractual obligation? You are in there to help their staff, their administrative team be better. Yeah. And so you don't have to say who the district is, but I bet you it's a failing district, because again, if you're not open, when they bring in you, or they bring in me, or they bring in any of us, they're bringing us in with a plethora of experiences. And we weren't people that read about being administrators. We weren't, we're not somebody that wrote a book but never stepped inside the classroom to teach, two different pathways. You through lateral entry, which is significant, me through a traditional program. So here's another nugget, y'all. Always be open to someone talking to you about your blind spot. Because if you are arrogant and think you got it all together, I bet you your daggone building is a mess. Your team is a mess. If you still in the classroom, your classroom is a mess, right? Because you should never, ever not hear what somebody's got to tell you. Now, you don't have to take everything that they say, but be open to hearing what they have to say. And what Dr. Caston just said, if you are the administrator assigned to that team, then in terms of what I've been talking about, if you see those things or don't see those things that he just laid out for you, then you have an obligation as the LEA rep to say, we're not ready to move. We don't have enough information. And help the parents to understand this. We will not be pimped for a check. We not, because we have an obligation for that. And it takes, and you got to be able to have those relationships to be able to say that. So again, if you're an administrator in a building, trust me, it is two things that people ain't gonna like you for. Required lesson plans turned in, turn them in and check them and give them feedback.
That's right. And that's
your whole team.
Give them feedback.
Give them feedback.
Turn them in, because then it looks like it's just an exercise in futility.
And
right?
then you won't even know that they're turning in the same daggone lesson plans that they've been turning in all year.
Yeah.
That's one. Good. The other thing is that with your lesson plans, and you're checking them as an administrator, always look for that differentiation. And if you don't know what that looks like, then be willing to say that, right? Because that was a aha moment for me, administrator in a middle school, and I had an amazing team. But we kept talking about differentiation. It's a word we throw around all the time. We assume people know what it means. And then I had a teacher that was courageous enough to say, I don't know what that looks like. So now what? We got to drop back. And not everybody needed that.
Yeah.
But once one person, you don't know, you might be the one voice in the room that is not afraid to be transparent, that gives everybody else permission to be vulnerable.
Love it. Let's keep going. Hey, somebody out there, it's 12:41 Eastern time, and we still here. Hit that share button, hit that retweet button, whatever platform you're watching on, we here, and we're gonna keep going till we end it. Not a lot more, but let's go. I'm with Dr. Flowers on this one. Hey, Doc, you got a section in the book, and for those that may have tuned in late, I'm using this book. All three of my guests today are contributors to Fighting the Good Fight: Narratives of the African American Principalship. You can get this right on Amazon. If you got a second device right in your vicinity, just go to that device. Don't cut us off. Just go to that device. If you got Prime, it'll just go right through there, ship it to you tomorrow. So get your copy. It's a dynamite book. where am I at? I'm with Dr. Flowers. Dr. Flowers, you know, you got a section here called robocall. And man, did that resonate with me in terms of you know, you were a new principal and you getting it all together for the new school year, and then you got to do this robocall, and you were in that perfectionist mindset, and that was a stumbling block. And the reason it resonated with me so much is because when the pandemic came and everything switched to, I was literally sitting here doing presentations from say 8 in the morning until 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night because of time zones. And I mean, it was the craziest period of my life professionally because I hated it. It was just too long sitting here talking to 4 and 5 different audiences. But here's the thing. It morphed into folks asking, could you do recorded keynotes, right? So initially I'm like, all right. So I did them. But I found myself making mistakes. See, if I make a mistake live on a stage or live right here on this platform, I don't care. I don't, you know, like no, when I'm talking about like if I stutter, right? Like I just did, I said it like that, right? So if I do that, I'm good with that. I got no issue with it. But when I was doing them recordings, I'm like, man, I got to do this over. I got to do this over because it's not perfect. But I know as a speaker, I'm not a perfect articulator. But I have no issue with that. It's my brand. He gonna make mistakes, right? So here's my point. Now, I don't do them. When them folks call me, could you do a recorded keynote? And they gonna pay me good. I'm like, nah, keep the money. Or I can refer you to somebody else who might want to do it. I can't do it for that reason. I can't sit up here because I can't do the perfect speech. And listening to myself doing a speech and it's not perfect, I'm going to cringe. But if it's live, I'm good. So I'm saying all that to say, going back to that perfectionism, because I know that person is on this call watching. Why was that robocall such a challenge for you in that context?
It was the first time that the community would have heard my voice. And for some of them, they would hear my voice and never saw my face. So as I prepared for that, and it took so much out of me because I was like, if I don't get it right, first impressions, and if I mess up, or if I breathe at the wrong spot, you know, somebody will pick up on that. So I always kept thinking about the what ifs, the what ifs, the what ifs. And so for me, it's just like, this is just my one-shot deal in order to get the community at least to think, okay, he has some type of education or he's competent. He sounds competent and things like that. So even starting with, when I was rehearsing or trying to record, I would even get down to almost my final line because I typed it out. I had it in front of me. And if I felt like I messed up, I started all over again. So it's like I wouldn't give myself permission to be human at all. And then I also had to realize is like, well, how can I do that? And then I expect my teachers to come in. And if they make a mistake, then, you know, don't be so risk averse that you fear you can't correct yourself. No, you need to go back and reteach something. So I really had to start looking at myself and applying, you know, what I was expecting of my teachers to myself. Because again, I felt like the community was not going to be forgiven. Maybe some of them didn't want me. So maybe some of them didn't vote for me because at that particular school, you know, I had to have a community interview. Not only did I go through the school, the superintendent and their board, I had to have a community interview. And that was stressful for me. Like you, I was better live than I was on the recording. So I was just like, oh my God, man. It really, really almost to the point where I became nauseous. Now, am I better at it? I think I am. I don't have to do a lot of robocalls, but it's a reminder of me that someone's always listening, that someone is always going to find something wrong with what you say, how you even say it, even down to the point of even what you sound like. Like I don't even like the way I sound. And I almost found myself getting back to that spot, to that old Jay, preparing for this, or just, I was like, oh man, I got to make sure that I sound a certain way. But I was like, no, you bring your true self, what you've done for years, and just speak. One of the things that, I know you didn't ask this, but as everyone else was talking about so many different things, and what has helped me to be successful. There's so much has helped me to be successful, and so many different people. But one of the things that I used to say to my staff all the time is that, I don't want you on my staff if you're too scared to go out into the community.
That's right.
If you're too scared to build relationships with people, then you're at the wrong spot.
That's right.
And, there are times, whether you feel like you can't go into subsidized housing, or you don't think you can go to a Black person's house and all this other stuff because they don't welcome you, well, then there's a reason why they don't welcome you. But also, let me tell you this, just because I'm Black don't mean they're going to welcome me either.
That's right.
I have to have that conversation on the porch, or they coming out the door and things like that, then that's where I'm going to meet them.
That's right.
Another thing that I've learned, I think that has helped me, is that, for so many in the African-American community, the principal or the school has always been separate. So one of the things that I used to do at the beginning of the school year is that we would go out into the communities, not just when we were looking for students and absenteeism or all this other stuff, but we would go out to the community and we would just walk the community. Now, one of the things that I always cringe, like, I'm not going to put you on a bus. It's not a zoo exhibit for me. Right. I said, but what I'm going to do is that we're going to walk into the communities and see what's going on. People started coming out their door after they saw what we were doing. Initially, they were running in the house because they thought we were the authority. Right. And I always had to look at how we dress. But I was like, if you are put in this position as a leader and you too scared of the people that you're there to serve, then you're the wrong leader for that.
That's right.
I've even had to have conversations with politicians at my school, because I had a politician tell me one time, is that, Mr. Flowers, I don't know why you pouring so much into your kids, because we need these kids to be laborers. They don't need to go to college, and they won't go to college. It was a school full of Black and brown kids. I hadn't had my coffee that morning, and I was on a whole different level.
Yeah.
I never saw that politician again. And the superintendent called me into her office, and we had a great conversation. But what I appreciate about her, at the end, she supported what I said. And I think part of the work that you have to understand, it's not about position.
That's right.
Because, we have so many people that are position chasers, entitled chasers. I believe, this is just me, that this particular position is a calling because I'm at a place where I can help others.
That's right.
Where and if I'm not here to help, then why am I here?
That's right.
And, and sometimes I even call them empathy conversations, just listening to the families. What is it that's keeping you from coming into this building? What is it that's keeping you from doing what you need to do or help your child to be successful, which, I think Dr. Caston was talking that about. So it's more than just being, quote unquote, that principal. And, sometimes I had to realize I was the issue. I have to get past myself in order to help the community that I was called to serve. And so once I understood that and became comfortable with that, there were some robocalls that I messed up completely, because for me, I think I paused at the wrong time, or my country twang kicked in. I think I may even use a word like y'all, or bring your mom and them and all this other stuff. Listen, some of those affluent suburban parents were not up for that. Right. But you got what you heard, and I'm not changing it. So I think sometimes we have to understand the culture, the community that we are serving. That's right. And that's what I think Dr. Baker said earlier, wait your time. Your time is not everyone else's time. And when you have to understand that, listen, when you are a principal, it's tough. But being a Black principal, to me, is tougher. That's right. Because there are so many complexities to it that you have to consider. Sometimes I have to wait, are you upset because I'm your boss? Are you upset because I'm your Black boss? Or what is it? Are you not accepting this because of what have you? And then when you do call people on the carpet when it comes to instruction, you're looking at the instructional culture. When I'm walking in classrooms and I don't even feel like I belong or don't even know what's going on, or I'm getting ready to fall asleep. Oh, you're not going to reach Jameer right now.
That's right.
Or throwing him out because he keeps beating on the desk. I remember as a teacher that I'm going to pass the mic or turn the service back over to you, is that I had to learn, like, why do you keep beating on this desk? Jameer was my beater. Right. And, even when I'm up teaching, and whether I was teaching and I'm dating myself, Tears of a Tiger and all this other stuff, he was just beating. And I was like, stop looking at me, look at that book. And, if I stopped, Jameer could answer any question.
That's right.
I was like, how I'm going to help him with that beating, because he was not only irritating me, but irritating others. You know what I had to do?
Put erasers on the pen.
I allowed him to bring some straws from the cafeteria. Beat on your leg, dude. And when I did not constrain him.
That's right.
And in order for him to learn. So those are the things that I'm like, I have to be creative, because you're called to serve, at least in my role and my thinking as a principal. And if at the end of my life, I have to give an account for that. I don't take principalship or leadership, as a joke.
That's right.
I'm not in it for the money. It's like, whose lives am I changing? And sometimes in this role, I have to understand that, yes, I have to change minds in order to change lives. But also I got to figure out that sometimes my message is hindered or not heard because of the color of my skin or my gender. And sometimes I've learned over the years too, is that my color of my skin sometimes has gotten me to some principalships, because I know how to, in their head, they didn't say it explicitly, but I knew what they were saying. I could conform. I could talk to the parents who lived in those $6 million homes and those who may not come from that same type of environment. So you have to understand what you want to serve and how you serve, and understand yourself as a leader, and understand what you will not compromise in order to be effective. And that was totally not what you even asked me.
No.
It's important. That's important.
It aligned, and I want to stay there for a second, Doc. So this is a very broad question. You can kind of narrow it with your response, but how does that leader that's out there get out of the way of oneself in order to be one's best self as leader? Because I know I was in my own way sometimes, and I know, and obviously, you were as well. Talk to us.
I had to had this revelation that it's not about me. It is about my voice, the power of my voice in order to get what my students needed. And, one of the things that I realized too, is that oftentimes it was my teachers who had the answer, but they're so used to district people coming in or somebody from the state coming in, especially the underperforming schools, telling them exactly what to do, and all this other stuff. And they didn't have a voice. But also one of the things is that you have to realize is, I think someone already said it, we don't have all the answers. But for me, I needed the voices of others in order to make the best decision. And oftentimes we shut out student voices because of either their behavior or the way that they look or their academic performance. Who do we go to? We go to the compliance students. Those are the ones that we pull on or pull in and all this other stuff. But oftentimes, if you really want to get down to the core of an issue, talk to your students who sometimes it's you or teachers mislabeled as misbehaved or acting inappropriate, because they were some of my closest friends. As a teacher, I never understood, like, listen, you can do certain things, but your behavior is impeding. And at the same time, once I learned to build that relationship, because we talked about the power of building relationships, I quickly realized that there are some teachers who don't know how to build relationships with individuals who do not align with them. Yeah. And that's part of getting in your way, is that you have to have, that hardcore, crucial conversation with yourself and recognize what you bring to the table and what you don't bring to the table, but also remind yourself of the goal. And one of the things I used to do, and I still do, is that I keep a journal. I know, and I even did that as a kid, and I hid that because they was like, black boys don't write, black boys don't read, and all this other stuff. I used to get joked. I was supposed to be out there playing basketball and all this other stuff. However, I always kept a journal, and I reflected. There are so many media composition books that I have. I dated them, but to me, that has helped me to understand the importance of moving out of the way and also letting others get in the way in order to help. That whole distributive leadership, teacher leadership, bringing the parents in, really to have a voice, but also not stripping away students. Because oftentimes when they come into school, what do most schools do? We strip them of their culture, their voice, because we don't want to hear it. We're too scared to hear it. Providing them that space in order to make it work for them,
That's powerful. And you mentioned that reflection, and I don't go anywhere. Everywhere I go to speak, you look at my website, the main photo on the home page, I'm standing there at the podium with the mirror. The mirror is everything. That's the most potent tool that I have in my toolkit. The mirror, self-reflection, self-assessment, self-adjustment, self-improvement. I'm gonna go back up to Dr. Baker. And Doc, you've got a passage within the book. You indicate that as a young girl, I think you were around 4 years old, you had an aunt that was a member of the Louisville chapter of the Black Panther Party, and there were elders, village elders, and you got an initial exposure to your history. I'm familiar with, from reading it, how the downfall, but I'm going back beyond that. You had these seeds being planted as a very young child, a very young girl. And my question to you is, because you know my work and where I am as it relates to our story, our history. What role might this initial information you were receiving, being in that environment of a Black Panther Party chapter meetings, what seeds were planted? What did some of that initial information do in terms of your development as it relates to history, into the woman, into the leader, into the educator that you ultimately became?
So those seeds were planted early on, and I didn't realize when I used to talk to my aunt about what was said to me, which was that when I got into school, do not let the people tell me that Columbus discovered America, because the Africans were here hundreds of years before he ever got here. And as I always hear that conversation in the voice of the elder that told me. And my aunt said to me, I'm amazed that you remembered that, because you couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years old. So my first point is, if you don't think words matter, and I didn't know how young I was, but she remembered the conversation. She confirmed that the conversation occurred. So that confirmed to me that words matter. And it doesn't matter how young the baby is when you start to sow. You don't always know how that seed is germinating in your life. But I integrated the schools of Jefferson County. And I remember fighting to integrate the dance team. How you gonna have a dance team and not one Black girl makes the dance squad? How does that work? Like, that was my argument. Like, you telling me that not one of us that tried out. Now, I'm not the best dancer in the world, but I sure dance better than these white girls on the squad. So there it is, right? There's that seed kind of germinating, right? Because in those meetings, that whole sense of, being proud about who you are and fighting for what's right. And so over the course of my lifetime, those seeds just continue to grow and flourish and flower. And the fact that I was not afraid. And I often say that this generation is the Joshua generation, right? These young warriors, men and women, and young lions and young lioness, they're not afraid to die. They don't mind going into battle. That's what Joshua was. Moses used to have to tell him, slow up, hold up. They're dying for the wrong things.
Right.
Because they don't have anybody in their lives that is speaking life to them. And they're not speaking truth and not speaking hope and prosperity for them over their lives. So they're going out here, they're taking each other's lives, they're taking the lives of other people that look just like them, because there's a disconnect. And so how it showed up for me was I just kept fighting. And sometimes because of my youthfulness was indiscriminate about the fights I took on. I don't care. I'll say it. I'll do it. And people knew that. And so they would feed me things to fight about, to take the hits, right? And initially I didn't care because I didn't understand how I was being used for my superpower. But then as you mature, and that's what I would say to Dr. Flowers, that when you were talking, what I was thinking about is sometimes as we mature, we learn how to navigate that. That's what when I heard you kind of talking about how you evolved, that's what I was thinking. So now you don't get to do that. You don't get to use my voice and my power to fight the battle that I agree should be fought. But if you brought it up, you fight it. And so that comes, I think, with maturation. It also comes with who is in your village. See, we don't have a village anymore. So stop saying it takes a village. That's why we're fighting so hard in the schools to try to build a village of support, because the community village is really dysfunctional and in some instances non-existent. And the very village that once used to surround and encapsulate and to pour in to the next generation is almost non-existent. And so any educator that you talk to that is as passionate about education, is passionate about being a leader in their building, you're going to hear remnants of the same kind of story. You're going to hear remnants of the same kind of style, the sense of community, the sense of building relationships, the sense of holding adults accountable. You're going to hear those remnants, different versions of those same truths. And that is what connects us. And that is what has caused me now, as a legislator, I fight to make sure that the legislation that they're trying to pass won't go. We're not, as long as I'm in the room, we're not going to criminalize our kids. We're not going to increase the SRO presence in schools. What I'm fighting for is more resources, more counselors, more nurses, more mental health professionals, PD money being put back in the budget so that people can get good, embedded PD, not just a one and done. So I've taken this fight to a bigger level, right? They didn't let me in as superintendent, because as superintendent, I would have put a moratorium on the number of kids that were being tracked into special ed. I would have ensured that any principal that was in a school that had children of color, which means it's all of them, had the tools necessary to lead their buildings to ensure that they were touching all those kids, right? We would have made sure that our teachers understood that when, I forgot what you said the baby's name is, let's say Raheem, is tapping on the desk, we're not going to make that a battle. We're not going to send him, to the office for that. We're going to give you some erasers to put on your pencil and let him keep tapping. See, that's the cultural piece. And if you, as the administrator, have not done the work, if you don't have a book, a library of books that you refer back to, that I still refer back to, I heard Principal Kafele say he still refers back to, for you to continue to build your skill set on how to lead teachers in being culturally responsive and understanding that piece. If you don't do that work, you most certainly cannot lead somebody else to do the work.
That's right. Hey, look, let me jump in here, and I know we're getting late. We ain't not too much more, but Doc, I got a passage I want to read here, because and the reason it's a little longer than the other ones, but I want the audience to hear this for those that don't get the book immediately. This is a section you wrote called The Desegregation of Jefferson County Schools in Louisville. And I took just this piece. It says, it took Louisville's Jefferson County Public Schools 21 years to begin its school integration efforts after Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954. In September 75, I was in the 6th grade. It was then that I began to personally feel the effects of Louisville's decision to achieve racially integrated schools, which resulted in Black students, myself included, being met with extreme violence. When the district announced a plan that involved busing Black urban students to predominantly white suburban schools in Jefferson County and vice versa, our buses were met at the doors with a hail of bricks, rocks, bats, sticks, fist, spit, and profanity by the Ku Klux Klan and the angry white mob seeking to protect their school. Now, before I go further, see, a lot of times we think of Little Rock, Arkansas, with this narrative, not thinking about other parts of the U.S. and in this case, Louisville, Jefferson County, which is comparable to what was happening at Louisville. It's at Little Rock Central. So this aggression was met with equal resolve on the part of parents, community activists, and the law to ensure that we would be able to attend school unharmed. As a student, I remember hurrying from my bus to the school amid the daunting barrage. I felt a myriad of emotions as well, mostly fear and anger, but more than anything, I felt powerless as I struggled to understand the madness. Similarly, the violence shown towards students during the integration of Little Rock, Arkansas, or Boston, Massachusetts, caused the National Guard to be activated, as well as armed guards having to accompany students on buses and convoys in order to ensure cooperation and safety. Sadly, this was to little or no avail. And well, I was going to stop. Let me just do this last sentence, 2 sentences. I vividly remember the focus being on our safe arrival and departure. However, I cannot remember the same focus or regard for what occurred once students were in the building and respective classrooms. My teacher sat with her back to us for several weeks, rehearsing almost on cue her refusal to teach these N-words. And I'm gonna stop it right there. I read that because I know that there's a lot of folks who are much younger than you and I who watch this broadcast every Saturday. And I know definitively, because of the kinds of content that I put out there when I'm on the road, that there's a lot of folks out here in classrooms that do not know American history. And when I say American history, I'm including African Americans. I don't always say Black history. Because when I say Black history, I'm compartmentalizing our struggle from the rest of America. And I prefer these days to say American history and to say to my white colleagues and other folks who are not Black that this which I'm describing that happened to Black people or successes of Black people is a part of the American fabric.
All right.
So before you scream critical race theory, no, I'm telling you your story as an American. But I'm focusing on the experience, the struggles of being Black in America, right? So I felt the need to just read that for someone out there that may have been thinking, I heard of Little Rock, but I didn't know the same thing was going on in Louisville. Yeah, Louisville in Prince Edward County, Virginia, they shut the whole district down. Right. So there's a lot to be said there. But I say that to say this, Dr. Baker. I got a question. I do have a question. Comparable to the question I asked you before, but now I'm not talking about that history you were learning as a little girl. I'm talking about this history you experienced as a young girl. How did that experience shape you into the woman, the school leader, the politician or government official, the human being that you are today on October 8th, 2022?
So I as you were reading that, I started to tear up. I'm trying to hold back tears because there's still scars there, right? And when I share that story, I tell people, this wasn't something I read in a book. It's not something that I see on TV. This is my lived experience with the Klan in their full regalia, right? We see that. But to have that attack you as an 11-year-old child, right? So how that has affected me is, up until that point, I'm going to say that race for me was a non-factor, even though I had grown up with the Panthers, you know, children see black and white. They don't see gray. And they don't necessarily make the connections back then because we were sheltered and shielded from so much. So even though I had gone to school in mixed classrooms, and I don't remember but one black teacher, which was a social studies teacher, Miss Guthrie, in my first 5 years of school, right? But for some reason I never felt through those first years of school that somehow the color of my skin was an issue. Although I'm sure it was, I didn't feel it and didn't know it to be intentional until that point. So going through, at that point, 6th grade was still a part of elementary school. And then you went to middle school. At that point was called junior high, 7th, 8th, and 9th, and then you went to high school. But from 6th grade through 11th grade, all of that visceral hatred, and now the activation of those seeds sown, because now it's clear to me that what I was sitting in the room experiencing in my younger years of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, now I understood that triggered something for me. So now I'm angry. And now my home life is falling apart. And so I'm more angry. And I tell people I didn't grow up poor. So I don't like to give that, you know, I don't try to paint my childhood worse than what it was. I grew up in working middle class. But because of the decisions that my parents made in terms of my mother deciding to leave, and then my father who adopted me deciding that he no longer wanted to be a parent to a child that he didn't birth, I experienced situational poverty. And what I tell people is the difference between being a hungry child growing up in the 70s and being a hungry child today is we had dinner hour. So if you situated yourself at somebody's house between 5 and 6 o'clock every day, or 5 and 6:30, inevitably their parents were going to ask you if you wanted to stay for dinner, and that you needed to call your parents and see if it was okay. And if you were smart enough, you would situate yourself around the neighborhood enough that you could get a meal every evening. And if they didn't give you a meal, if you had missed dinner and you happened to be at the kitchen, like I was one day, and saw 2 great pieces of steak, that half-eaten steak, and you're leaving, you wrap it and put it in your pocket so you can eat it that night, that has an effect on you. So by the time you get to 11th grade and you're going into your senior year, and your mother decides to come back into your life and say, oh yeah, we're getting a divorce and we're moving to North Carolina, and this is a woman you hadn't seen for 4 years, but another single mom in the community tucked you into their house with their other 4 daughters and raised you like their own. What you get, Dr. Caston, is a child who is a keg ready to explode, who is fighting and cussing and doing, because why? Only a few teachers chose not to put me out of class. They allowed me to sleep in the back of the class, Dr. Flowers, because when they called on me, I done heard everything you said, not realizing that I'm sitting in the back of the class with a 32-ounce plastic tumbler with a 12-ounce Big Red and a half a pint of Bacardi 151 dark, and I done smoked a joint before I got to school, so I am self-medicated to get through the day. Wow. Right? But didn't know I was smart. Still don't know I'm smart. I tell people, you know, people like, she's so smart. I always read. I still read. So when I went to Harvard, the one thing I got from Harvard is smart is something you can get. It ain't a limited supply. So how did that affect me? That angry child is who showed up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And healthy adults, both black and white, healthy adults, wasn't moved by all of that bravado that I was using as a protection, but really as a cry. Somebody see me hurting. Somebody help me cry. Help my cry. I'm crying out for help. And the majority of children that are showing out in your schools are me. So if you get yourself in a healthy state, you don't have to get in no power struggle with a child. And that's what they are. Whether it's elementary, middle, or high, you win by default. You are the adult with the power. So don't get in no power struggle with them. Cuss you out? You ain't never been cussed out before? I used to tell them, baby, is that the best you got? Because I've been cussed out by the best. And then when you finish with that foolishness, I'm going to need you to do what I'm asking you to do. When I taught in the alternative school, let me help y'all. I pulled the bat out. Some of y'all think y'all going to be able to take me. You might get a good punch in. But when I hit you in the back of your knees with this bat, you going down. So you better take the best shot you got, because it's going to be the last one. Don't worry about my job. You just worry about what's going to happen if you come for me.
Hey.
Why? Because I was them.
Yeah.
And those kids to this day, y'all, I tell you, I live in the hood. A 9-year-old baby just got shot in my backyard. Oh. But guess what? I don't worry about being in this community. I don't worry about going into the projects. I still walk those because those kids are now adults and they know my car, and you bet not check for me. So Principal Kafele, that's who I am, yeah. Right? I tell people, don't let this light skin, long hair fool you, because baby, the Louisville girl don't let Cookie lies just beneath the surface.
Love it. That's why I shared that long passage, because I want to hear that about you. That's the beauty of this platform. A lot of people, I read the comments every week. A lot of people say, man, I don't get this in grad school. Yeah, because we bring on some great people on here.
And if you're in a position, guys, this ain't no plug for me. This is a plug for Principal Kafele, for Dr. Flowers, for Dr. Caston. If you are in a position to bring people in to do your PD, you're in a position to buy their books, then do that.
Yeah.
Do that. That's the way that you can also advocate. If you know others that can bring something into your building to help your staff, and you're in a position to speak to people at the district level, do it. And he won't say this, but I will. I had to fight them at the district when I asked them to bring him in. And at that point, his rocket was just taking off.
Yeah.
But they would not have done it to a white man. And the way in which they cut up the PD and had him do multiple sessions when he was only supposed to do 1 or 2 and maybe meet with our parents. But you know what? He so believed in the work that he just wanted to be in the room.
Yeah.
But we have got to fight to protect our own. And I did. I was on the record and verbally, and I was just a principal in the district on the team that chose him. So be ride or die for your people.
Ride or die.
Be ride or die. Whether it's the people that you're engaging to work with, whether it's your kids, be ride or die. Because here's the thing, guys, and this is my final word, I promise you. If this is a godly assignment, God got your back. Now, that don't mean it ain't going to be no pain with it. It's not going to be that the promotion, you're going to get every promotion that you get, because every promotion is not for you. And sometimes the alternative to what you thought was your pathway is going to look totally different. If somebody would have told me just 5 years ago that I would have been serving in the North Carolina House and I had never run for anything before, I would have told them, get out of here. Mm-hmm. I'm less than 10 years from retirement. Go sit down somewhere in the back of the bus and have several seats. But my assignment is a different pathway. But like I said at the beginning, I am an educator. What else comes behind that, that is the lens that I do all of my work in. So know that your assignment is for a season, and as you transition to your new assignment, it is always going to be painful.
I love it. I love it. We almost done. Hit that share button. Hit that retweet button. Dr. Caston, let me read this real quick. This is short. It says, you wrote this: the likelihood of male United States citizens being incarcerated is 1 in 9. However, there's a great disparity among incarcerated races. In 1 in 17 white men, 1 in 3 black men, 1 in 6 Latino men will be convicted within their lifetime. Education, and this is key, education can infiltrate any person and prove that you don't have to become just another number with a tragic end. With that said, I got 2 things for you here. Number one, what measures, and this is sort of an overlap on the previous conversation we had, but what measures then can a school leader put in place toward altering that reality? And I'm focusing on that black youngster really with that 1 in 3, right? Here I am. I'm going to the principal now. I'm not at the AP, doc. I'm principal, and I read this data. I read Fighting the Good Fight. I read Jakin Castor, Dr. Jakin Castor, and he's saying 1 out of 3, and that could be a very large segment of my population. So what do I need to do? And I don't mean me as an individual, but I mean me as a collective staff to ensure that the young people that we serve are on the right path to maximizing their potential.
We have to educate them, and in the words of Malcolm X, we have to do it by any means necessary. You know, I think it's very important to, first of all, share this data with people. People need to know that this exists, you know, and it gets even deeper because we look at the Black population makes up 13% of the United States, you know, whole population, but we're 50% of the prison system. You know, that's an issue. That's a problem. You know, so we need to begin to share this data. We need to begin to not be ashamed of it, but you know, first of all, you have to know, you know, it's sort of like we do in teacher professional development, always data wall this, data wall that. Share this data with this population so that it's clear as to what our overall objective is and what we're fighting against. You know, to have this information ingrained in the mindset of our people. Because it's very real out here, you know, when you begin to share the disparity even among the sentencing. You know, you have people who are first case in receiving 30 and 40 years, you know, for things that seem kind of petty. You know, you can do some things that's not even taking a life and get more time, but you begin to look at how crack carries more time than coke does. Why is that so? You know, because crack cocaine is considered the poor man's drug that's predominantly in Black areas. Therefore, it is criminalized a little harder than you know its counterpart. You know, so again, we have to educate. We have to share this information, and we have to make sure, you know, when we're talking about planning, we have to make that's why we plan, because we want to be able to teach with a purpose. We want to teach until it changes. We want to teach until it infiltrates. We want to teach until that seed falls all the way down into fertile ground and can begin to take root, and know that sometimes you just being the seed planter won't be there for the harvest, because you will have to move on. But know that if you believe and if you do it correctly, it's going to be there, and eventually it'll begin to take root. And we have to believe that the rest will innately be done through the processes that have been set out there. You know, the sun is going to come out, the rain is going to happen. Someone else may prune it. You know, the natural process of education is just going to happen, because it's very real. You know, and it's bothersome for me to be a principal and to see almost every individual who I come in contact with look like me. It reminds me of my brothers. It reminds me of my cousins, my dads, my uncles, my friends. You know, and many of them say, you know, we ended up here because we really just didn't know. We didn't think about the consequences to the actions that we were that we were doing. So we had to remember to be in this fight, because it's snatching them up, and then when they're getting out, people don't want to be bothered with them then, because now you have this education, but you have this F on your life report card, which is called a felony conviction. So we have to really be mindful of that when we're teaching and when we're trying to reach, again, and to go back to what Dr. Flower was saying earlier when you were talking about the robocall. I think it's important for each of us to know that we are enough. I am enough. All of the mistakes that I'm going to make, all of the flaws and all, I am enough. I am the one who can help to block the school to prison pipeline. You know what I'm saying? With all of the mistakes that I have, we have to realize that I think about my life and professional trajectory. I stay in trouble. So I always get called to the superintendent's office. I was called to the principal's office as a kindergartner and a first grader all the way up through high school. So I know that that's just going to come with my personality. I'm a controversial individual, sort of by nature. So understanding that I am enough to help to save someone, even as Dr. Baker said, I am enough to be able to share an edifying word to build someone up, because it might be that one word, that hug, that smile, that I believe in you, that will make an individual make the right decision, to say that I can do that. It was a Spanish teacher for me that made me realize, get rid of your pride, boy. You're going to miss out on the opportunity to be something great. So we have to push until we teach, until we see change, teach until, the paradigm shift begins to happen, so that we can see our former students being productive citizens versus meeting them and you're in a juvenile system, or you're where I'm at with adults in a medium maximum security prison system.
Powerful stuff. Doc, let me go back to that quote of yours. Education can infiltrate any person and prove that you don't have to become just another number with a tragic end. I want to take a devil's advocate, quote unquote, devil's advocate role. Mm-hmm. My favorite book is called The Miseducation of the Negro, which I'm sure each of you have read, maybe multiple times, as I have. This is a very old copy. You'll never see it looking like this. I got this in the 80s. But this is the book that created the path for me to become a teacher. I was clear after reading this book. But that title with that word, miseducation, and there's a quote in there that I typically quote, but I'm not going to quote the whole thing, just the first line, when he says, when you control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions, right? And so what I want to throw at you, how would you counter, and this is for you, Doc, how would you counter the argument that the schools are playing a significant role in miseducating Black children? So if we're saying on the one hand, education is the vehicle to get to where we want them to go, but on the other hand, there's another voice out there saying, but the school is playing a significant role in miseducating young people. What would you say? How would you address that?
I think it's due to a lot of people coming into the profession who are not in it for the passion of it. They're in it for just a paycheck. They're in it because they couldn't get a Fortune 500 job. I've heard Teach for American people say that. So they come in, thinking that the things that you learned in books and in classrooms is really going to be applicable in an urban setting. I think about my time, even at working on my master's degree at Hopkins, how, I stayed in trouble because I'm like, some of these remedies you're coming up with, we don't have the resources to be able to do this stuff that you're talking about. I've never seen an IEP written in this manner where you can get all of this fancy and expensive resources, so how can we make this realistic to the children that we're teaching? And a lot of times that's what happens. We fall into the status quo of just getting numbers. Teachers aren't respected enough to do their jobs and to do it well. The teachers who do it well, they burn out because they're constantly having to get all of the children that need to be repaired because they're one out of 40 teachers who can do it. So then we become a part of the status quo. I'm just going to get in here and try to get my numbers so that they would leave me alone, or, you know, I'm not really vested in this work. I don't really care about what it is that I'm doing. And that since the children can see that beginning to happen. You know, I think about the school where I taught in Baltimore City. They made a documentary about it, Hard Times at Douglas High, you know, and you could see all the chaos around you, but they didn't show the teachers' classrooms where there's structure and where people care. To build that aspect, that there are children that's in this setting that are doing wonderful things, that are talented, that can sing, that can dance, that can draw, that can write, that can preach, that can teach. You know, so it becomes a part of the status quo of just passing people on, so that the prison system can continue to, you know, when we look at the miseducation, I'm sorry, what is it?
Oh, the Negro.
The Miseducation of the Negro, but it's a new one that was written about Jim Crow, the new Jim Crow, the area of mass incarceration. You know, it talks about this system that is utilized even in school system, how we teach them to walk in line. We teach them how a very rigid schedule, and if you fall outside of that, you're going to be punished. The school sort of looks almost just like a prison, so it's like we're preparing them for you know, they're not allowed to be creative. You know, they have to stay within this 100% structure, and if you fall outside of it, you're going to be out. You're going to be disciplined. You know, a lot of that stuff is prepping our children to go right, which they say is the new slavery for cheap labor. You know, so we have to be careful to make sure that we don't fall into just becoming a part of the status quo. You know, that we are passionate about what we're doing, and I'm not talking about burning yourself out either, because I have to be honest with you guys. You know, I was one after my 5th year of teaching. I figured out how to get it done through the students as a conduit, so I didn't have to work as hard. You know, they were going to be working harder than myself, but just really figuring out ways to engage them, figuring out ways to work against that very system that can be utilized to try to destroy them. When you are aware of it, that's why you have to teach with everything that is within you in order to counter that, in order to fight against the rage against the machine.
Yeah. And I would just say, Dr. Caston, because that's what my whole doctoral work was on, is that it is now predisposing kids to the prison system. But keep in mind, you know, this is controversial, but y'all hold on, I'm going somewhere. Schools are not failing our Black kids. It's not failing our Black kids. It was never designed to educate them to begin with.
Right.
So it is doing exactly what it was designed to do, right? To educate elite white males. It wasn't for white women or girls, and it definitely wasn't for Blacks. So everything about the structure of public education, as we know it, was not designed with the Black student in mind. So the reason we see so many children, Black children, failing, because it was never designed for them. And the whole structure that we follow was to train and prepare for the workforce at that time. Working in, you know, walking in lines and sitting kids in rows was preparing them for the industrial age workforce that is no longer in existence. It's obsolete. So now that workforce has shifted to the penal system. But we need to understand that it is doing what it was designed to do. That's why we need more disruptors inside the system, not to reform it, but to totally invent it for the 21st century.
That's right. Look, y'all, I'm by the way, before I say what I was going to say, Dr. Caston, was Principal Bridges there when you were teaching?
I'm sorry, where?
At Douglas?
At Douglas? No, I was there under Clark Montgomery.
Okay. Look here, y'all. I was too ambitious in my question. I still got a billion more, so I ain't even gonna do it. But I gotta let Dr. Flowers get out of that. See, I got him still trapped in that perfectionism. I gotta get him out of that now. So he wrote a whole section on liberation, and I would be remiss if I kept you there, right? So Doc, real quick, that section liberation, you said it was clear. My perfectionism and workaholism had crippled the culture, climate, and mood of the school. Therefore, a change in my behavior was in order. So I wanted you to at least address that liberation before we I want to go to those quick impact questions that you saw in the email I sent you. What are examples of how your perfectionism first and workaholism were adversely impacting your staff?
I think, now that I think I know, because this is what they shared with me.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like I became an interrogator for my teachers, my instructional coaches, students, parents. And when I say interrogator, it was like failure was not an option. I saw failure as it reflected me as the leader. And what I mean by failure is that I didn't have a certain percentage of students passing a benchmark, a certain number of students doing well in other areas. So and it was just that one incident. I remember that incident like it was yesterday, where one of my instructional coaches burst out into tears, and she asked to be excused because I was relentless and I did not let up, because I was, expecting me out of her and others. And I realized that I was getting ready to fail as a leader. And how was that impacting my staff, and how was that impacting my students? My staff became tired and became exhausted. And they were giving me everything they got, because by that time I had got the right people in the right places, because I had to do a lot of career coaching as well, and then moving people out and putting in different positions. So it wasn't to that moment that I had to sit and reflect. And I felt this big, if not smaller, because it worked in one school. So I tried to replicate that in other. And I'm here to tell you, context makes a different way. The way I led in the urban setting was not the way that I lead or could lead in a rural setting and other areas. So it really, teachers became fearful when their students didn't do well. They really weren't being honest. Well, I shouldn't say honest. They just really wasn't being open. So a relationship that I thought was very positive began to tarnish. And you can't function like that. You can't move like that. Even at the academic affluence school, I really had to fall back and really reflect on that. And I think that moment when one of my instructional coaches had that meltdown, it was really like a hit across the head for me, like flowers. You got to change your ways, because what I've allowed to do is let others, and the pressure I was putting on myself, but also what others thought of me, impact the way I was leading. And that I was measuring my success by standards, by test scores. But because, again, for this particular school, actually all the schools that I was administrator in, I was the only Black male, or the first Black male leader. So in my head, I was like, oh, you're not going to fail under my watch. But I also had to redefine failure. I had to redefine success. I had to redefine accountability. And I started with myself with that. That's when the liberation started taking over, versus, to me, that crippling idea that I had to be perfect, and that the scores had to be perfect, and the teachers had to be exhausted like I was. And I knew that was unhealthy too.
Yeah. And you talked about having a mentor that kind of started the process of you navigating, getting out of that situation that you found yourself in psychologically, emotionally, etc. Last question. Talk to us about the significance of having a mentor in our spaces as leaders, as assistant principals, as principals. Why is that key?
I think Dr. Baker said it earlier. Leadership can be and is oftentimes lonely, especially as a principal. And you can have 1,600 assistant principals and still can't confide or let things go like you could with a mentor or coach. For me, I got a mentor and I also got a coach. And those two really help hone in. The mentor helped with the operational pieces of education administration and leadership. And then the coach / mentor helped me to navigate the system as an African-American man and a principal, because I knew that was a piece that my mentor did not understand and would not understand. And I'm not going to try to make you understand. You can hear me all day long, but you still don't understand me.
Right.
So I had to find something to marry the two. And that helped tremendously. I read all the books. I read this, that, and the other, but still for me, the difference is between reading and employing. And I still struggle with that because even having the pressure coming from the superintendent, and I think sometimes people, they put pressure on you and sometimes they don't know the amount of pressure that they're putting on you.
Yeah.
People are dependent on you, Flowers. And I'm just like, I know that. You don't have to tell me that. So the coach and mentor taught me how to compartmentalize, but also to give myself permission to sometimes walk away from it, put it down in a very healthy manner, and learning like at the end, what is your end goal and how are you going to get there? Even something simple as planning backwards. But then there were days where, I was getting ready to push send on an email, which I knew was getting ready to spark some problems and had some tone to it.
Mm-hmm.
That, I had my coach who was calling me like, boy, before you send anything, you call me, especially on days like this. Yeah. So those things helped. Very liberating for me. And to this day, I still keep in contact with my coach and my mentor.
Good stuff. Hey, this is the longest session I've ever done. But that's but this is good stuff, man. This is good stuff. Look, I want to do these quick, I call them my BAM impact questions. 1 word answer. If you need a sentence, but if you go beyond a sentence, I'm gonna cut you off, right? So just 1 word, 1 sentence. I broke the 21 questions up into groups of 7. So except the last one, I'm gonna give all of you. So let's go, Dr. Baker, you're first. The first 7 questions. Is education on the right path for underserved children?
No.
Can true equity, which we didn't talk about today, but can true equity occur in America's schools for Black, brown, and other underserved students?
Yes, but not in a vacuum.
Does Dr. Amber Baker's work contribute to the progress we desperately need?
Absolutely.
If you could do a reset on your life, would your line of work be different or the same?
The same.
Why do you continue to do this work? The work you're doing now?
Our future depends on it.
What fires you up within the work that you do?
Injustice.
What do you love about the work you do?
My babies.
Going on to Dr. Caston's, what do you dislike about the work that you do?
Organization.
What has been your greatest victory in this work?
Graduation.
What was your greatest mistake in this work?
Too emotional.
What has been your greatest challenge in this work?
Self.
Are you proud of your first year as an assistant principal?
Yes, it was only 8 months.
Are you proud of your first year as a principal?
Yes.
Who inspires you in this work?
Parents and students.
Dr. Flowers, batting cleanup. What are you reading right now? Book, blog, article, anything?
The Pink Slip, Jim Crow.
Oh. What book would you recommend for our viewers today?
The book, the Good Narratives.
Yeah. What do you want to accomplish that you haven't accomplished yet?
Dean of Education.
Are you satisfied with where you are professionally right now?
No.
What could you say to a viewer out there who continues to face closed doors?
Keep going.
What could you say to a viewer out there who's lost their fire?
Ignite. Reignite.
And lastly, for all 3 of you, starting with Dr. Baker, if Dr. Amber Baker was a word in a dictionary, what would be your definition?
The word or the definition?
The definition.
Major disruptor of lies.
If Dr. Jaquin Caston was a word in a dictionary, what would be your definition?
It would be onomatopoeia. Pow.
Wow, that's different. Wow. Dr. Jamon Flowers, if your name was a word in a dictionary, what would be your definition?
Service.
Service. We made it to the end, so to speak, folks. I was overly ambitious. I could have worked less this week, I see. But that's all right. But look here, folks. The folks on the call right now, you know how we do this. Those of you who have been with me, if you enjoyed today, give me some fire. Oh, y'all already giving it to me. Some fire emoji, some hearts, some bombs, some praise, some diamonds, gems, whatever. Give me those emojis so that they can see them, to let them know that you appreciate the time that was spent this morning and this afternoon on week 128. Oh, I'm seeing them. They coming in strong. They coming in strong. Hey, folks, while they're writing those or posting those emojis, let them know how they can reach you, how to get, if you got a book, I think, Dr. Baker, let them know how they can reach you, contact you, book you, whatever it is. I'll start with Dr. Baker. How can they get in touch with you?
So I'm on Facebook, Amber M. Baker. I'm on Twitter. My Twitter and Instagram accounts are connected to my campaign, but I check those often too. That's voteforamberbaker.com. You are interested in booking me, ambaker491@gmail.com.
Very good, very good. Dr. Caston.
Everybody can reach me on the major social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. It's just my name, Jacken Caston. Hit me up, slide into the DM. I'll talk with you. Thank you.
Excellent. Dr. Flowers.
Same as Jacken. I am on all of the social platforms, and just look me up, Jamon H. Flowers.
So put that middle initial H in there, folks. That's where I kind of couldn't find you for a minute. Put that middle initial H, Jamon H. Flowers, and you'll find them. So I don't know that Flowers and Caston do this stuff professionally, but you heard their words today, so they could. And Platt told you to write that book anyway, Caston. So yeah, so get that out there. Good stuff, everybody. I appreciate you.
And a Principal Kafele, a gentleman never announces himself. So let me put a plug in. He talked about his 2 books at the top of this, but he done wrote about 30.
Yeah,
and you should have them all in your personal collection, and they definitely should be a part of your professional libraries in your schools.
Wow.
And again, you can see his bookcase in the back of him. You can see Shadows of Mine in the back of you. Get his book, book him. Like I said, he is my friend. He is my colleague. He is my mentor. We have been each other's champion and cheerleaders, and he's retired now from one aspect, but that just gave him more time to get out there and do what he's doing. And then to Dr. Flowers and Dr. Caston, my brothers, I want to just encourage you, to keep doing the work. Keep doing the work personally so that you can continue to be better versions of yourself, because you are absolutely amazing. And keep doing the work in your respective arenas, because we're needed in all the settings. We got to be in all the places to make a difference in all the changes. And again, Principal Kafele, thank you for opening up your platform to us, because a lot of people wouldn't do it. And association is a great thing.
I appreciate you. I appreciate it. Look at all that fire right there. So look here, y'all. Let me close this out. Y'all stay put. Don't leave me even when I close out. Hey, folks, thanks for being here. We went long today, but that's all right. And then if those that couldn't stay the whole time, they sitting on YouTube. You can watch them anytime. Join me next week. My man, Dr. Joe Sanfilippo, will be on, author of Lead From Where You Are and Hacking Leadership. That'll be next Saturday at 10:55. And then I might add, the week after, we got a big one, man. I'm bringing 3 assistant principals on. I'll be live in Montego Bay, Jamaica, but we'll be on, and I'm gonna have 3 assistant principals. And then the week after that, I got Dr. Gloria Latson Billings. She will be on with me the week after. That's the rest of October. That may be sitting here, or it may be sitting in Newark at a conference. I'm not sure, but she and I will be on. Make sure that on every Saturday at 10 o'clock, Facebook Live, Sean Hurt followed by Create and Educate with Dr. Sheikah Houston and Tammy Taylor at 10:30, followed by me at 10:55. And then on Sunday, my man Josh Tovar with Dean Packard on Unlock the Middle at 7. And then Dr. Roz Gaskins and Coach Williams Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6 on Facebook Live. I showed you the books before, so I'm going to keep going. But the Assistant Principal 50, the Aspiring Principal 50 are the two that are associated with this platform. Get yourself a copy if you don't have them. In fact, we might have some new folks on here. Bam. Get yourself both copies. Go to Amazon, put in Baruti Kafele in the search bar, and you'll see all my books. They're all sitting there. Make sure that you subscribe to the Virtual AP Leadership Academy YouTube channel. Hit that little red button. We got 16.4 thousand subscribers, but I'm trying to bring that up to about 20,000. So hit the subscribe button. Tell a friend, tell a colleague you need to be on Kafele's YouTube channel, Virtual AP Leadership Academy. Subscribe, follow and like the Virtual AP Leadership Academy Facebook page, because the commentary, the weekend is 2 parts. Saturday is the academy, but Sunday is the commentary. So, but you can't see the commentary. You can't read it if you're not on the Facebook page. So you got to be on that page, because that's the only place I post it every Sunday morning, not later than 10 o'clock. And then that should be, that's it. So lastly, as I always say, your diet, man. We talked about it a little bit earlier. You got to take care of you. Know you for them, right? So you got to take care of you. So make sure you watch your diet, your intake. You know, Dr. Baker referenced my health. Yeah, I had a heart attack, man, on a stage, University of Miami, 7 years ago, giving a keynote address. Main artery clogged 100% because of diet, right? So it's preventable. And diabetes came with it, type 2. I manage my diabetes with exercise and diet and exercise, no medication, no insulin, no nothing. It came with the heart attack, because I'm disciplined. I get them 3 miles in, right? So you gotta put forth the work. 3 miles might sound like a lot. I sometimes do 2 miles, right? Whatever it is, get it in, right? And then lastly, your COVID precautions, man. This thing ain't gone. People acting like, oh, the virus is behind us. Post COVID, we can go back to normal. Nah, you can be normal all you want, but don't be getting up in my face with your normal. Because it ain't, because for me it's still here, right? So take whatever precautions, monkeypox, whatever pox and other viruses are out there, just take care of you. Other than that, thank you for being here. Thank you for hanging in so long. I know you benefited. I ain't got to ask you if you did. I know you did. I see you next week, 10:55. Until then, have a great week. Have an extraordinary week. Have your best week yet. Peace. Peace. Thumbs up. Cock that fist back. 1, 2, 3. Bam! I see you next Saturday. Y'all stay there.